Hey, Jason Bradley from Community Solutions, Minnesota. We just started an Instagram account that I want to tell you guys about because we're finding all this great stuff across the state of Minnesota, and we have to share it with you. You're going to find exclusive content that is not going to be anywhere else on the web. We're going to give you behind-the-scenes looks at our podcasts, our tour of roundabouts, the mixed-use development that we find, our keynote addresses, all this stuff that is going to have a great story along with it that you can share with your friends and your neighbors so that they understand what's going on in their cities as well. Where can you find it? COMM Solutions MN on Instagram. Thank you very much. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So now please share it, get out there, and let's tell our story, Minnesota. Thank you.
I had a friend who was a big baseball player back in high school. He could throw that speedball by you and make you look like a fool, boy. Community Solutions Podcast, Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter's here with me. Like usual, we're going to take a little different tack today, you know. Andrew, you looking forward to Turkey? It's coming.
It is coming, and I'm looking forward to actually not working on Thanksgiving for once.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to watch, what do you call them? Vikings, I think they are.
Yeah?
I'm going to watch them and probably not get out of my shorts. And actually, I am because I'm going to my wife's aunt's place. I will have clothes on.
Well, that's good. That's probably good.
Yeah, but so yes, I'm looking forward to that. But I'm sad. I'm sad that I'm always sad when baseball ends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never happy when that ends, even after the World Series and all that, and the playoffs, which get longer and longer and longer every year. But it's usually not good to catch me when baseball season's over. I'm usually extra agitated, but I promise I'll behave tonight.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that, you know.
And I know what you quoted. Remember how I never know your music?
Yes, that's true.
That was, what's the Born in the USA guy, right?
Yeah,
Bruce
Springsteen.
I know who that is. Yeah, Springsteen.
It's a good thing my colleague Mitch Berg isn't here. That'd be blasphemy. He worships at the altar of Springsteen.
Yeah, Springsteen's
Yeah,
that third voice you hear is none other than Brad Carlson. How you doing, Brad?
Gentlemen, it's great to see you. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, like Andrew, I'm going to miss baseball season. I think of how many counting it down. 105 days to pitchers and catchers report to spring training, something along those lines.
I'm going to miss our Twitter arguments and stuff. That's kind of why we're here.
All in good fun, brother. All in good fun.
Very passionate.
Yeah. Well, and we're a show about local issues. And, you know, what's more local than baseball? I mean, I know I grew up playing T-ball, playing Little League, pickup games down at the local baseball field. That's kind of harder to come by today, isn't it? I mean, being able to find a local field that'll...
We can do a podcast on that in and of itself, I think.
I think it's I don't know why that is. I think it's a tragedy. I mean, I
have theories.
I do too. I think, though, that when I was growing up, I mean, I've said this before, every single friend I know and had played Little League, and pretty much everybody I know except me played hockey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a baseball hockey area, this area, I should say. I mean, Crystal Little League at one time was one of the biggest little leagues in the entire state of Minnesota.
Wow.
And so I don't know what's happened to it. It's about half the kids play there that used to. So I don't know. It was a privilege to be one of the chosen few to be on a majors team in Crystal All-Star, as I was for years.
And I played into high school. You know,
me too.
I love the sport.
Yeah, that's about the extent of my experience as well. I think after my junior year of high school, that was I think I tried out for my college team, and I went to UW River Falls Division III, didn't come close, and I went to one of those Trans tryout camps at the Metrodome back in 1990. Yeah, you know how they just have those open tryouts at the Dome, and to see if they could, sign a player. I did go to, my buddy and I went to one of those. Didn't make it. I couldn't even get the ball past second base. I remember I don't know who the guy was pitching, but of course he has to throw like X number of pitches to each of the guys trying out. And there's literally probably 100, 200 guys. And I took a pitch just to kind of gauge it. And the guy, he'd been pitching all day, and he was like, "What is wrong with that?" I was like, "Ooh, Jill, I better take the bat off my toe." I just wanted to gauge, kind of time him a little bit. And of course, didn't get the ball past second base. But
I used to do that in the batting cages. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, right.
Well, I mean, and I played till I had the old elbow surgery at about, it was about 17 when I had that. And then I remember I didn't play my senior year, but that was around the time of the 94 strike. And in fact, that was my senior year in high school. And I think baseball was the number one sport in this nation. Even then, I really don't think it was surpassed by the NFL. It may have been television rating wise, but I don't think the NFL was on CB radio in the 70s. I don't think
True. Yeah.
it was just a different. NFL learned how to capitalize, I think, on television and on how they're once a week. And I think baseball, ever since then, has had kind of some trouble adjusting to how to appeal to younger people. I don't get it because, to me, I think while there's things about baseball I don't like, I find it the ultimate game of thinking, of strategy. You can't. Some sports you can just be tall or you just be fast, and baseball's not a sport like that. So I find that very intriguing, and that athletic talent is one part of baseball, but it isn't everything. And I think for a lot of sports, you can be 400 pounds and play in the NFL, and in baseball you're at the concession stand if you're 400 pounds.
Unless you're Kent Herbeck. But
go back in his day.
First day, yeah.
Go back in the late 80s. He was like 6'5".
A big guy, but super flexible.
And he's agile, and I think he never gets. I think he's the greatest first baseman. I think the only first baseman ever better than me that I've seen is Ken Herbeck.
And to kind of go back what you're talking about a little bit, there's not one specific body type that can make it in baseball. Look at Evan Gaddis. The guy was literally a custodian less than a decade ago. And now he's a world champion with the Houston Astros. Very compelling story.
True. I got my opinions on that, too, and we'll get to that.
On custodial work?
No.
Okay.
On the body type that we're heading towards in baseball.
Huh.
Well, I can't take roids anymore, so
Well, true, but the testing is always behind the drugs. But I think we're heading toward a computer-generated body type. I'll get to it.
Okay. Plenty to get to.
Get to my theories.
but I understand what you're saying, because when I was a boy, that's all I would do. It's my bedtime. I'm putting on the Twins game, and I'm going to fall asleep listening to the Twins game in my bed. As young as 7, 8. I loved it.
And I've got theories on why. I think if I can espouse one, I would say it is the amount of broken homes in this country. Who was the first person that ever played catch with you? Your father. Okay? How many kids don't have a father now?
Right.
How many kids' father's not in the home? Who took you to your first game? My dad took me my first game. I peed by his tire of his truck. And, it was at the old Met. I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of kids the game isn't being passed down, I think, the way my grandfather passed it down to my dad, and the way my dad passed it down to me.
Right.
I think that's one of my theories as to why it is. And I'm not sure baseball's declined worldwide. I think it has declined or plateaued or it's peaked or it's whatever in the United States.
I think part of that, though, has been the rise of the NBA as well. And I'm not, faulting another sport, but there's only so much market share and so much attention that can be given to anything. And I think because, I don't know, in the summer you've got your pickup leagues, you've got people that, they'll spend hours playing basketball. And so maybe they're not around to listen, to the games, watch the games. I know I still find solace, on a Sunday afternoon, clicking on the afternoon game. And for me, I like that, but...
You got a theory?
Well, I think what is baseball really focused upon now as far as expanding their demographics. It's the inner city, hence the organization Reviving Baseball in the Inner Cities, RBI, which Troy Hunter's been a big advocate for. Because, let's be perfectly honest, there is a dearth of African American players in the major leagues today. Why is that? Again, there are a lot of theories. One that has also been bandied about is, let's face it, baseball, to get to the big leagues, it's tremendous delayed gratification. Yeah. You got to slog on the buses to the minor leagues for at least a couple of years. That's if you come out of college. And then obviously the team controls your rights for the first 4 or 5 years before you can even see arbitration, maybe get some real money, and then start to make the big bucks where it's, guaranteed contracts. Whereas a lot of youngsters in the inner city today, to y'all's point, they see guys going to the NBA from high school or just one and done in college, 1 year and out. The NFL, maybe go to college for a few years, or you have to at least be,
3 years out of high school.
3 years out of high school before you make the NFL.
Remember, he went to, I can't remember where he went, then he did 1 year at Marshall. And
he started at Florida State, and then
I don't think he played.
He didn't play at Florida State, no. And he never played a game for Notre Dame either. It was 2 years at Marshall, and then he was 21 when he was drafted by the Vikings. So
I know, he's a week younger than me. But
oh wow, okay.
I'll take a step forward to that. I think you're right, and I've always made this case. If Jackie Robinson were around today, he'd be in the NFL. He was a great football player back in the 40s, but the NFL was nothing. Baseball was the place to make the mark, not just as a great athlete, but as a black athlete.
Right.
But today, no way he would be playing, no way as a poor black kid he would be playing baseball. And that's not to rip on them. It's just to say the reality is he'd have taken the quickest road to the money or the contract, as a lot of people would.
That's not a bad thing, right? Yeah.
It's not a knock, but I don't think he'd have been a baseball player. We wouldn't know Jackie Robinson the way we know him if he'd have come along 30 years later. So it is different. I think that you're right that the sort of ticket to the I think we've seen a rise too in one sport athletes. People who play one sport, they specialize in. And that was never around when we were kids. I mean, you played baseball in the summertime, you played football in football season, but I don't know anybody who played on one traveling sport and did it, worked on it.
Absolutely.
I went to baseball camp when I was a kid, but that was you took BP and you ran in a gym till you could puke. It was fine. It was one weekend. It was one weekend out of the winter. I think I took it at North Hennepin Community College, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And so it was more. I think we've seen a rise in you're good at this. It's kind of like in school where they try to put you in a column now. And I think we've seen more of a push to be a one-sport athlete and not necessarily play every sport.
I think so, and I think
coaches, you don't see many Joe Mauers now. You don't see a lot of them.
I don't think that's as much parents as that is coaches who are pushing, a certain type of conditioning year-round. And also, like with, if you're playing basketball, a basketball coach is not going to want you risking your knees playing another sport. Or, I used to be a basketball player as well in high school. I mean, you can tell because I'm all of 5'11".
When I drive through your hometown, there's signs that talk about the Bradley Hook.
Oh yeah, that's the place. Yeah. Oh my goodness. But I mean, you think about it, and I remember going and playing varsity basketball or varsity baseball, varsity hockey. That was the thing to do, and that's a great point. That now everybody wants to be on these traveling teams, It's good to be on the varsity baseball team, but it's even better, I think, to be on the traveling team that, you have your like here in the Metro, you've got two different sets of traveling teams, and one's a Metro team, and one is a greater, outside the Metro team, and they're ranked differently.
Even when I played in the 90s, I mean, you had a high school team, you had a Legion ball, you had basketball has AAU that we got real big then, and I think it's a big time commitment. It's again, I think that there's an element of one sport athlete, and you can combine it with all the factors, that we talked about. Baseball's a sport that, I don't know. I go back to my youth, and the greatest thing I remember. This is a 1987 memory. And I'm sure we'll get into the 87 and 91 Twins a lot because I'm an expert on them. The weekend at Milwaukee, you'll know what I'm talking about, where Puckett went 10 for 11 or whatever. Yeah, I listened to that. Back in my cabin in those days, we got 2 channels on TV. My grandpa had a battery-powered radio, and you'd listen for Herb Carneal's voice, and we could never remember the station up there, and blah, blah, blah. One of the best memories I have is John Gordon going ballistic, calling the 6 for 6 Kirby Puckett Day.
Yes.
It was Labor Day weekend that year. And so there's just a connection with baseball. I don't think I'd remember that about a North Stars game. I just can't explain it. There's just something. I don't remember Dino Ciccarelli scoring in the '86 playoffs. I don't. It just doesn't stick out for me the way baseball does. And the '87 Twins are the heroes of my youth. The '91 Twins, when I was in high school, were kind of like my teenage years. And I mean, I don't think in my mind, they're the only World Championship teams I've ever followed on a daily basis ever in my life. So they really stick out.
That is a great memory. I do remember that 87 weekend series. Puckett was kind of into a slump going into that series, and Friday night he had an offer, and I guess Tony Oliva really got on him and said, we need you to step up because the Twins are still only a half game up first place. We're talking late August. It's crunch time, and then he goes 10 for 11. But the best part of the 6 for 6 Sunday game is Tom Kelly. He often vocalized his frustrations with players. He wasn't afraid to call players out. And Greg Gagne, who he loved as a defensive shortstop, terrific defensive shortstop, but the guy at times just couldn't figure it out with the bat, and he would swing at bad pitches. And
I have the term, the Gagne swing.
Yeah.
The breaking ball low and away.
Yeah. Eventually replaced by the Kadire swing. But anyways, so you had Gagne came up in the 9th inning with 2 outs, and he swung and missed at a pitch in the dirt, but the ball got away from the catcher, so Gagne reached, allowing Puckett to come up to get the 2-run homer and go 6 for 6. And Tom Kelly, when telling the story, he says, well, he should have even come up because Gagne was up there with 2 strikes, and as Greg is wont to do, swung in at a slider low and away, but the ball got away from the catcher, allowing Gagne to reach first base and Puckett to come up and have a chance at the 6th hit. So TK still had to get that little dig in on Gagne to recall a fantastic day for Puck.
Isn't that what was great, though, about Kelly sometimes? I'm one, and I have been public about this, that I think Kelly should have been let go in the late 90s, not because of anything he did, but I feel like when they had the seasons with Cordova and Knobloch and Molitor, and it was obvious that they were going to trash that and start over for the 12th time in the 90s.
Well, because Puckett, that year he got glaucoma.
96.
Yeah.
And I just thought
that was going to be a good team. That team had a winning record going into the final week of the season, and then they, obviously.
They didn't have Rick Aguilera for much of that year either. I think with Knobloch and Cordova having career years, with Molitor coming over with 200 hits, I think they'd have been the wild card. They wouldn't have beaten Cleveland, but I think they'd have been the wild card team had Kirby been able to play. But when it was obvious a year or two later they were going to blow that up, I thought they should have let Kelly go then. But I tell you what, I'm sure we'll get into this because I have a lot to say about the 87 and 91 teams and then comparing it to baseball today. Kelly was a big reason they won in 87 and a big reason they won in 91. If you watch 87, you see things with his managing that you don't see anymore. You see him free to do things that I think managers maybe aren't free to do anymore.
Right.
And I think that had a lot to do with their success. I do think when it came down, it should have been we're going to whitewash this, but, I have a lot of respect for TK, and his honesty is refreshing rather than the Gardenhireisms of, he's babbling, working inside, outside, changing speeds, blah, blah, blah.
Well, the thing about Kelly is he would never say anything to the guy. He would just send a message through his actions. Like if Knobloch nonchalant, I still remember a game in 91 in County Stadium, Knobloch struck out with the bases loaded in the top of the 9th. That would have added insurance runs to the Twins' lead, and then the hitter leading off for the Brewers in the bottom of the 9th hit a grounder towards second, and Knobloch kind of nonchalanted it. He was a rookie in 91, and Kelly surmised, okay, that's a rookie taking his at-bat out onto the field. You can't do that. You got to leave that stuff behind, and the Brewers ended up winning that game as a result. And TK sat him for 2 or 3 games, never told him why, and now Black, this 23-year-old rookie, is like, why am I not in the lineup? And eventually he figured out, it's like, oh, okay. TK let him figure it out. To your point, as it got to the late 90s, players were different. Players changed. He tried that with A.J. Brzezinski. Can you imagine how that would have worked out? How that worked out?
And David Ortiz.
Yeah.
Another guy
Yeah.
John Walker.
Right. It just didn't work with guys like that. The game started to change around that time frame. So I agree with you that Tom Kelly probably would have been better off to maybe just go behind the scenes a few years earlier than he actually did. I think that's where he would have done it. Kind of like the Obi-Wan Kenobi. You strike me down and me rise up more powerful, whatever, behind the scenes.
Like the Kelly Knobloch card game story, if you've ever heard.
I don't think I've heard this.
That this was later. Knobloch wasn't he was probably the Twins' best play, him and Kirby, and they had a card game going, and Kelly and Knobloch were partners. This is maybe a little bit urban legend, but I've heard it a couple different times, that Knobloch didn't show up or something for the card game because he was mad at Kelly about something, and Kelly always called everybody by their real first name, so he called him Charles. And he comes because he's
I think his real first name was Edward. Edward Charles Knobloch.
Okay, well, maybe it was.
Can you see him? Yo, Eddie.
maybe he called him Charles just instead of Chuck because that's what when he does commentary he calls Dick Bramer Richard.
Yes.
He comes up and goes, "Look, I know you're ticked at me, blah blah blah. Here's why I did it, but look, don't drop out of the card game." Don't drop out of the card. I need you as my partner. Playing pinochle or something. So,
you could be used to me in other areas,
I got it all in a tussle about the fact that Knobloch didn't show up for the game of pinochle or whatever they were playing. Yeah, it was a different time, though, for sure.
Yeah, no question.
And this is interesting. I mean, I just want to. Our listeners are kind of probably scratching their heads, wondering what's going on.
When are they getting to the World Series here? Come on now.
I tell you, in politics. And we're not exactly talking politics today, but we are. I mean, organizations like baseball have politics within them and how things work, but they're also based on strategy. And to be able to win, you need good strategy, and you also need to be dedicated to your craft, and you need to work hard. And if there are things that you can take away from this discussion when it comes to running, for office, it's you got to have a good strategy. You got to work hard, and there are strategies, I think, that you can take even from sports teams, from legends, in how they approach the game that you can apply to how you do things as a candidate.
On that point,
yeah.
I heard one time President Bush Sr., George H.W., who played baseball back at when he was at Yale, said the rush you get in sports is the same rush you get in politics.
Interesting.
And I would agree with that. I mean, when we took, not we, but I mean in Crystal, like the group that we supported, that we helped, that we were working with, we actually got control of the council. How did that feel?
It felt like 1987 and 1991.
It felt exactly like that.
Yeah.
And it feels like that every time, like when we go speak with a group and we give a keynote and we,
You're right. There's
we
team
do
learning
Q&A.
I agree.
And
Totally.
I feel like that every time. And you as a candidate should feel like that every time. When you're stepping up to go knock on a door, when you're trying to do some calling, when you're putting in lawn signs, a lawn sign should feel like at least a triple, if not a home run. You're scoring points. You're going forward in your campaign and hopefully beating the pants off of your opponent.
I agree, but let me throw you another little curveball.
Yeah.
Actually, I take that back.
Okay.
I'm going to throw you a screwball.
Well, that is
because
fitting.
Nobody throws a screwball anymore.
Well, that's true.
So
because people are attached to their elbows, they like to have those around for a while. Yeah. Just ask Andrew Richter here with a big scar on his
never had a problem with that. But anyway, so I'm going to throw you a screwball or a knuckleball here.
Okay.
No two campaigns are the same.
All right.
Okay? No two ball players are the same.
Right.
No two games are the same.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things in a campaign that are a sacrifice bunt. There are things that are a hit and run. There are things that are a home run. There are things that are a double, blah, 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 blah. Now, baseball needs to be approached the same way.
Right.
Now, baseball today is not approached like that.
Right.
Now, are you intrigued by me saying that?
I am, but I think... Well, I know where you're going with this, and I understand.
You can't read my mind.
Wow.
Just because we've been good friends for 10 years doesn't mean you can read my mind yet.
I try.
Yeah, well,
Put my fingers up to my temples, and I think really hard. What would Andrew say? Sometimes I'm right. Other times,
there was that one time.
there was that one time. Yeah. But I think that's an important point to make, and why, if you're confused, why you need to stay engaged in this podcast right now, because we're going to start getting into some of that stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the World Series that just happened, but then we're going to talk. We're going to get into strategy, and we're going to talk about what works, what doesn't work. We're going to talk about hard work, and these are things that you'll be able to take some things away from, I think, in whether you're setting up a group like ours, whether you're running for office. So this is important, even though we're kind of just having fun because it's Thanksgiving week and we want to be thankful for something that has given us so much joy over the decades. It's also serious stuff that you can take away from. So given that, I just wanted to put that in there so that people understood where we were going with this today. We just did finish a World Series, and I don't know how you all feel about this, but like, I kind of have a hard time seeing the Astros as an American League team.
It's an excellent point, yeah.
It's like I have trouble seeing the Brewers as a national
The Sports Pickle said, boy, that was a great NLCS. Can't wait to the World Series now.
Yeah, I agree. I think of the Astros. I think of Mike Scott and Nolan Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that 86 team and that almost beat the Mets in the LCS.
Or the Bagwell-Biggio teams in the 90s. I think of that.
Yeah.
I think of the Astros. I don't really think of... And I do not think of them as an American League team whatsoever.
That is tough to get used to, no question. But
the Dodgers are still in Brooklyn,
right?
As far as I'm concerned.
Well,
you weren't even born when the Dodgers were in Brooklyn.
No,
Come on. All right. Okay.
by that,
Oh well.
I still live in a territory then.
Right. Well, the one thing I am grateful for is we can lay to rest this annoying chanting point on Twitter that was saying that, for the first 6 games, like, oh, this is compelling World Series. The tension hanging at every pitch, boy, this is almost like 1991. No, it's not. It's not. It's not close. So the fact that Game 7 was pretty much over with after the second inning puts to rest that annoying chanting point that it was like the 91 series. No, it was not. It was not. Not even close. I watched every game of the 91 World Series. 5 one-run games. 4 games ended on the final pitch. 3 of them went into extra innings. And Game 7, after Game 6 with Kirby Puckett with a big home run to send it to 7, oh my God, how does it get any better than that? It did! You got John Smoltz facing his childhood hero who threw 10 shutout innings, and TK after 9 wanted to take out Jack Morris. And this also may be an urban legend, but there are kind of different accounts of what Jack Morris said, some of them which were in a church, so I won't say what he said, basically saying, get out of here, I've got
Jack Morris has contradicted himself once or twice, too.
Yeah, but whatever the case, TK has kind of said, well, it's just a game, go get him, baby. And he was going to go out for the 11th, too. If the Twins didn't score the 10th, he had his warm-up on, glove in hand, wiping off his face. He was going in for the 11th.
And I've said this before, Jack Morris belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Agreed.
And unfortunately, I think he isn't. Maybe the Veterans Committee will put him in at some point, but to me, he had the most wins of any pitcher in the 1980s. He doesn't have the great ERA or that one great Cy Young season, but to me, if you take a look at the 84 Tigers and the 91 Twins, you're looking at 2 teams that would not have won a world championship without him.
No question.
And to me, that puts him over the hump. He's a maybe with the statistics, a probably, but what he did in the postseason, to me, puts him over the top. And I totally agree. That series wasn't close to 91. When you talk about a great series, to me, you have to have a great Game 7.
Yes.
If you don't have a great Game 7, if it's not 86, if it's not, 86 was more Game 6, but Game 7 in 86 was great too. And then he took a 2001.
Yep, Yankees Diamondbacks, very good Game 7. Mariano Rivera, rare blown save.
Yeah.
The Yankees, you figure Rivera comes in the 9th with the lead, Game 7 of the 0-1 series. Oh, well, the Yankees, that's their 4th consecutive World Championship. Didn't happen.
I know.
Didn't happen, yeah.
So, without the great Game 7, when when you're down 5-0 before you can even, grab a second piece of gum,
Right.
Then it's not a compelling game, even though it was a good series. I mean,
Now, people have been going back and forth on this. Should Clayton Kershaw started that game on 2 days rest? I mean, it's ultimate hindsight, but
I'll tell you why, because Darvish pitched like crap in Game 3.
Yes.
I'm going to go down. I'd rather go down with my best guy.
But
If he doesn't have it, he doesn't have it. But bringing him in the third inning when you're down 5-zip.
I don't know if Dave Roberts has been asked about this.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But if he were honest, I think he would say, obviously Kershaw had the 4-0 lead in Game 5, blew it, but they still let him come back out for the fifth inning, despite the fact the game was tied, because the Dodgers then retook the lead 7-4. They said, okay, even though Clayton was kind of losing it there in the fourth inning, we'll bring him back out for the fifth, and he ended up giving up the lead, or he gave up 2 of the 3 runs, and it ended up being tied, and he ended up being knocked around. So I say all that to say, if Dave Roberts told the truth, he'd say, well, he doesn't have the greatest postseason reputation. Game 1 of the World Series aside, he doesn't have the greatest reputation of coming up big in the postseason, and he just got rocked 2 days ago. Now we want to bring him back 2 days. I don't know. But my thing is, if you had brought him back on 2 days rest and he would have achieved the same result as you, Darvish, what would the fans have wanted as he said, oh my God, why did you start Yu Darvish on full rest? And it's like, did you see the way Yu Darvish pitched in Game 3?
Yeah.
Just saying here. So I don't know. I don't have really I waffle on this back and forth. A lot of people reference Koufax in '65 against the Twins. He started Game 7 on 2 days rest, which was amazing because you could have had Don Drysdale, who was not bad, coming in on 3 days rest, but you had Koufax, who had no off-speed pitch, and Johnny Roseboro, his catcher. I guess Koufax walked a couple guys early on, and Roseboro came out and says, Sandy, you don't have the off-speed pitch, what's going on? He says, I don't have a feel for it. And Sandy just basically said, bleep it, let's just blow him away with a fastball. How'd that work out? Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you had Mickey Lolich in '68 do the same thing. I just don't think, players, the problem is, pitchers never, ever, ever, under any circumstance do that today, so you just are left having no clue how somebody is going to come through. We've seen Madison Bumgarner do it once, saw Randy Johnson do it once, and the reality is that, my reality is, I go down with my best guy. If Clayton Kershaw, look, I know he hasn't done well in the postseason, but he's been the best pitcher in baseball, say, the last 6-7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if I've got him available, how do I not start him in Game 7? If he doesn't have it, he does. And you think about it, he only pitched 4+ innings in Game 5, and I know he threw 7 in Game 1, but he had only thrown 4 1/3 over the last 8 days. And there's no game tomorrow, so there's no reason to rest him for that. And he doesn't, pitchers today, they're not going to go 8 innings anymore. Certainly not in the playoffs. They never do. So all the score had to do was be close after 4 or 5 innings. That's really all they would have looked for. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think in retrospect it was a mistake. But after watching Darvish pitch in Game 3, where, he was basically throwing it underhand, I don't think it was I didn't have much confidence in him starting Game 7.
But the X factor is the Dodgers felt as though, they had the horses, they could generate the offense needed if they fell behind early. And, there was an inning here or there. Obviously Game 5, everybody went nuts, a 13-12 game. But outside of that, the Dodgers, they had their moments like the 9th inning of Game 4, where it was a 1-1 game going into the 9th inning. They exploded for 5 runs. But outside of that, they just really never showed.
Yeah, they batted .205.
A whole lot, yeah.
The bottom line was just nobody came through. They had guys on base all night long. The starting pitcher hit, 3 guys in the first 2 innings? Mm-hmm. Couldn't get any of them across. And again, it goes back to my pet peeve about baseball, and the Dodgers exemplified it at times in the World Series. Nobody moved a guy over. Nobody, when there was a guy on third with 1 out, nobody got him in. Everybody was swinging for the fence.
I forget which game it was. I think it was Game 5. Dave Roberts bunted with his cleanup hitter. I mean, if you're going to bunt and try to move a runner over, you don't do it with your cleanup hitter. I think it was Kike Hernandez started in that game, and it was a cleanup hitter. He tried to bunt with a cleanup hitter. So to your point, yeah, it's important to move guys over, play that fundamental baseball, but there are certain guys with whom you try to execute that and with whom you do not.
I do agree. At the same time, even if you're down 5-0 in the second, you can't hit a 6-run homer. You've got to chip away at that. If they'd have gotten a run in the third, a run in the fifth, and a run in the seventh, you're talking about a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, they had to know that the pitchers that came in immediately after Darvish, obviously Kershaw was one of them, who was the main guy, 4 innings, he was looking good. They had to feel like, okay, he's going to hold it down for us. Let's just get one here, one there. Let's not try to get it back all at once. But that was because if it gets to a bullpen game, it should favor the Dodgers, because Houston's bullpen was very shaky all year long, all season long. They won 100-plus games on the strength of their offense. They had the top offense in terms of batting average, and they were second in terms of runs scored and, I believe, slugging percentage. So Houston did it largely in their offense. Ken Giles is a good young closer, but you could tell they didn't have a lot of faith in him near the end of that series. Yeah,
bring him in when you'd think they would bring him in, and they had some good starting pitching too. Verlander was clearly a great addition for them. Pitched a lot of big games.
He agreed to the trade 1 minute before the trade deadline on August 31st, and so the waiver deadline. And Jason Stark pointed this out. Justin Verlander, he came over, with 1 minute to spare, and the Astros, 11:59 Eastern time, and the Astros won the World Series at 11:59 Eastern time. So it just all kind of came full circle. And, by the way, Justin Verlander gets a World Series ring, making, $20+ million a year. He gets to go home to Kate Upton. I mean, come on. Does anybody have it better than Justin Verlander at this point?
Is that B.J. Upton's sister? I don't know.
Kate Upton?
No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. No, no.
Sorry,
I've seen Kate Upton, and no.
Oh, okay.
It's not. Would not be, no.
Well, it's just, I do think it was a compelling series. There were plenty of things that made me, scratch my head about, and I know we'll get into this, but about how the game is managed, especially in the postseason. And it just, I'm Game 7. I hate to say this as a huge baseball fan, I fell asleep. I mean, when it's 10-20 and we're still in the 6th inning, and I'm seeing my 29th trip to the mound, I just couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. I mean, think about it. Game 7 in '91 was 3 hours and 23 minutes long for a 10-inning game. Okay, at 10:30 the game was over.
Right.
And for this game, I mean, it went on and on and on and on. And, I would have loved to see a game in under 5 hours. I would have loved to see.
That's why Game 1 was so refreshing. It was 2.5 hours.
Game 1 was very
2.5 hours.
It was good.
I mean, that's unbelievable. For never mind a regular season game, a postseason game.
And here's the thing: a true baseball fan loves a 10-9 game as much as a 2-1.
Oh yeah.
You give me two great starting pitchers going at it. I love that as much as any.
I was driving to. I had a work trip that I took Saturday evening. I flew into Chicago and drove from Chicago to South Bend, Indiana. And so when I left the airport, the World Series was starting, and I was listening to the World Series the whole way to my hotel in South Bend, and it was great. I was hanging on every pitch. It was 0-0 into the 6th, and the first hit Dodgers pitcher Alex Wood gave up was a home run. All of a sudden, it's 1-0. You talk about no margin for error. The guy's got a no-hitter, gives up one hit, happens to be a home run. All of a sudden, he's losing. I mean, I love that. You're hanging. Every pitch counts. Every pitch is so important. So, to your point, Andrew, I agree wholeheartedly. I love a good pitcher's duel. Yeah, I mean, we're so obsessed with points in this country, and it's like, I love a good pitcher's duel.
There was a lot of home runs in this series.
Yes, there was. Was there a record for the series?
I think so.
Okay. Which kind of exemplifies the season? Wasn't this regular season a record for home runs yet?
An average team hits 200 homers.
Yeah.
That's... I don't know what to say about that, because I'm kind of from the old school that there's a million different ways to create a good team.
Right.
And today, unfortunately, there isn't. As we'll see when I get into my sabermetrics rant. That there's an obsession with one or two stats, and it just kind of You're not going to see St. Louis Cardinals of the 80s. You're not going to see any teams like that anymore. So the compelling baseball, to me, has changed a lot. I'm not a guy who sits around and waits for a home run.
Well, and that's a great point, and I think Brad made a great point. That
heck yeah.
So
you mean every point I haven't made is great?
I'm just concerned about this one here.
Okay,
carry on.
We are so concerned with running up the score, as whether that's as sports fans or in other things. We're so concerned about what happens on offense that we ignore what happens on defense, and a lot of times, and this is true, I think, in life as well as in sports, that, it doesn't matter what sport it is. I mean, that's why so many Americans don't have what it takes to be able to enjoy soccer, because it's a...
I know I don't.
Well, I don't either. I don't like it. Because it's a low-scoring game. But...
well, I've seen a few World Cup games over the years, and... I'm intrigued by that just because of the, like watching the Olympics or something.
Right.
But yeah, soccer is just a sport. I don't see what's so compelling about it. It doesn't have to be 8-7 for me to like it.
Right.
But when there's really nothing happening, which I would argue happens a lot in soccer.
Yeah. But it is, and it's the play of the defense that doesn't let the ball get down the field, or
But that's where you elbow somebody and get out of the way and use your hands when the ref's not looking.
And that's why everybody watches hockey, because it's great like that.
But there's something I don't like about hockey either.
Well, get out.
Okay, I mean it's 2-2 and the puck. You're working your butt off, and the puck goes off somebody's arse and goes in. I mean, how is that great?
It happens. It's a fluke.
It's a fluke. It's not the.
You listen to hockey coaches; they talk about everything but scoring.
Right.
Oh, we forechecked well. We went after it out there. Well, did you score? That's kind of like the object, isn't it? Playoff hockey is even worse because teams play a certain way, then they get to the playoffs and they're all tight.
Well, I disagree. I love playoff hockey for the simple reason it's sudden death overtime. None of this one overtime, you play a shootout. No, sudden death overtime. I love it.
That's true.
Yeah, playoff hockey, I love it. And
unless we lose, then
we've experienced well too much of that.
Yeah.
But this isn't a hockey podcast. Right. I wouldn't have much to contribute, I'm afraid.
But it's having a great defense, whether that's hockey or politics or football or baseball. I mean, think about, this year with the Twins. I mean, Glenn Buxton and...
Byron Buxton.
Or Byron Buxton, not Glenn Buxton. That's the other guy.
Or Byron Perkins.
What he was able to haul in that should have gone for a home run or extra bases at least.
That's why I was grateful when he was hitting under 200 that they kept him in the lineup every day. Because I get so tired of hearing, we don't want him to lose his confidence. It's like... You're in the major leagues. It's a learning curve going from AAA to the big leagues. Yeah. And if you're worried about a guy's ego that he's going to lose confidence, guess what? He probably shouldn't be in the big leagues. Right. So let him go out there, take his lumps. For the runs he was saving with his outfield defense, it was well worth keeping him in the lineup. And guess what? He eventually caught on. He eventually found a stance that was comfortable for him, and he became a premier run producer down the stretch.
Absolutely.
Buxton there were a lot of guys that stepped up. I mean, Eduardo Escobar, Eddie Rosario, Byron Buxton, all stepped up and made valuable contributions to this team down the stretch. And, obviously Sano missed the last how many ever weeks of the season, and Escobar had to come in. Eduardo Escobar is not an everyday player, but when he was... a lot was asked of him, and he delivered. But to get back to Buxton, I'm just hoping this isn't a repeat. And I don't think it will be, but I just hope it's not a repeat of 2016 where he had that blistering final 2-3 weeks, and then he basically started off this season the way he did the prior season. But I think he's figured it out, and this is a guy, if he can just hit 260, 270, just get on base. I know you're not a big fan of the analytics, sabermetrics, but on-base percentage for a guy like Buxton, that's huge.
Yeah.
Well,
that's huge.
I think it is. I think it is for a couple reasons. One, he needs to hit higher in the lineup. I mean,
Right.
he's a guy. I hate Dozier leading off. I can't stand that.
That's another thing about today's game. Remember the leadoff guys were like 5'6" and could run like a 4.240.
I'm going to bring that up a little bit. But, to me,
Now you got guys hitting 40 home runs in a leadoff spot.
and I've never understood that. I mean, I like Joe hitting second, but ultimately, Twins don't have a traditional number 3 hitter the way I would define it. We've got 750.
We need a Gary Gaetti.
Well, we need.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about
Yeah.
Buxton. I've been asked a few times for my humbled opinion on. The standard for him is Kirby Puckett. I mean, in a lot of people's minds.
Some people say Mike Trout.
Yeah, and he has the athletic talent, but like I said, that doesn't always translate in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And what I still see from him, look, I hope he's great.
Yeah.
I would love it if he was a perennial all-star, and I think he's got it in him. But I still say 2.5 years into his career, 2 years and change, whatever you want to call it, I still see just way too many bad at-bats, way too many strikeouts.
He got better as the year went on, though. Not as many strikeouts,
I'd
but
like
yes.
to see him hit the ball to right field more, which he kind of started doing. I don't know how he can play the whole year and knock in 51 runs. I mean, I'd like to see him utilize his strengths better. If the home runs come later, like they did for Puckett, great. But as to your point for on base percentage, I don't care how fast you are. If you're not at first base, it doesn't matter how fast you are.
Yep.
So he's got to draw walks. He's got to bunt for hits. He's got to hit the ball in the gaps. And you see glimpses of that. You see stretches where he's the best guy out there on the field.
I think he stole 29 bases, was caught only once. I mean, that's like the highest stolen base percentage in I don't know how long. So, yeah, to your point, on base percentage 314, whereas Joe Mauer 384. And Mauer wasn't exactly, he hit a little over 300, 305. Wasn't the run producer that we saw, say, in 2009, 2010, when he was making All-Star game every year, winning 3 batting titles in 4 years. But if he can get it on base percentage close to what Mauer had this past year, get him out of the door. I mean, that is just huge.
And you talk about a guy who can go from first to third on a single every time. You talk about a guy who pitchers have to worry about on first base constantly. I mean, he brings, and that's, again, kind of a lost part to baseball.
Fastest inside the park home run, 13.85 seconds.
I think he just beat me out by 0.2.
Yeah, he eclipsed the previous fastest inside the park home run, which was, Byron Buxton at the end of the 2016 season. So, yeah, unbelievable. It's just fun to watch the guy run. And, to your point, it doesn't, if he just hits a gapper, it doesn't even have to get all the way to the wall. I mean,
be a triple every time.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's fun to see, and I was glad that they kept him in the lineup. I know he had one stint on the disabled list earlier this year. They brought up Zach Granite, and some people suggested, well, maybe send Byron back down to AAA once he comes off the disabled list. And I'm like, for what? There's nothing more to prove down in AAA.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Every time he's gone down there, he's batted 350.
It's nothing.
Nothing more to. He's a major leaguer, and he needs to be here. He needs to have, he needs to play every day. And we do lose. Certainly, we lose something defensively when he's not in there.
Oh yeah. I mean,
we have to have.
Zach Granite's a nice young player, can be a good utility outfielder, but I'm sorry, he's not an everyday
outfielder.
Yeah, and again,
there's a role for that.
Yeah, but the guy I was most pleased with this season was Eddie Rosario. I mean, the way you talk about swinging at everything. This guy he rarely had a 2-ball count.
Yeah.
It was insane. The guy just swung at everything, up high, low and away, low and in.
Not a bad ball hitter, though.
No, definitely not. But for him to cut way down in the strikeouts and then hit 290 was Eddie Rosario. I thought had the most impressive. Shall we say comeback? I don't want to say comeback. Maybe may not be the
progress of any
correct term, but yeah, for as far as progressing from one season to the next, I was very impressed with Eddie Rosario.
Stunned upon that because he looks lackadaisical to me.
Yeah, he still makes some boneheaded plays in the outfield. He's got a good arm, and it's so good that he will, when a runner goes from first to third, and he has no chance to get the runner at third, he'll still throw to third, and the guy who got the base hit then goes to second. Now you took the double play out of order. That's got to stop. But that's hopefully something he can learn. He's still only 25, so he can learn from that. But he still tries to make some of these unbelievable circus plays. It's like the fundamental thing: get the ball to second, then there are runners at first and third. The double play is still in order.
Say the things I learned in Little League.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, that's the basics.
It is interesting that as we talk about this, I mean, the Twins had over 100 losses last year, and they were the first team to go from that to making the playoffs. And then you had...
That requires a little asterisk, because 33% of the teams in each league get to the playoffs now.
Right.
But it's still impressive, to your point.
Yeah, keep in mind, they won 83 in 2015.
Right.
So maybe last year was the anomaly.
It might be, but but even looking at how often they've been in the playoffs recently, and then you take a team like the Astros that were terrible when they first came to the American League, and now they end up winning a World Series.
Yeah, you know what that's called? It's called drafting first, like 4 years ago.
Well,
it's not bad when you have George Springer, Carlos Correa. Correa was the same year as Buxton. Correa number 1, Buxton number 2. In fact, sorry to step on your point here, Jason, the Twins drafted George Springer out of high school in 2008, but he wanted to go to college. Oh. So then the Astros drafted him out of UConn, yeah.
Oh. No, and that's part of that. I mean, what did these teams do to go from worst to good or first? Because you have a team like the Dodgers, and I know that they're kind of like the Yankees, and you love the Yankees. Let's just go buy the talent versus let's grow the right talent.
See, I
don't agree with that.
I hit back at that. I don't think the Yankees and Dodgers are doing that as much today.
Right.
The Dodgers, they got a big high salary guy in Kershaw, but they have developed a lot of their guys and made savvy trades. Justin Turner was under the radar. I think it was with Baltimore and Boston, another different team. And he didn't make hay until the Dodgers picked him up. And then they've developed young guys like Corey Seager.
I think what's going on is they have the money. Actually, I don't fully agree with this, but they sort of have the money to keep everybody.
Okay.
Because if you look at the Yankees in the late 90s, they were not a bunch of free agents. Rivera, Jeter, Bertie Williams, Andy Pettit.
The core four, Posada.
They were all guys that were drafted in the early 90s and came up. Now, the Yankees...
Because George Steinbrenner was suspended, he couldn't trade him away.
Yeah. They kept them all. Yeah. And then but it was more later when they kept trying, whether it was Giambi or A-Rod, or remember, they didn't sign A-Rod. They took on A-Rod's Texas contract. And they did lose Alfonso Soriano at the same time.
Right.
So I don't know, and I'm not a total believer in that. The richest owner in baseball owns the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah.
If he wants to spend money, he can spend it.
He could.
The Pohlad family's worth $6 billion. Don't give me this.
See, I don't like that either, because their wealth comes from different businesses, from Dad Carl's inheritance. I don't agree with spending your personal wealth on your other businesses. It's like you take the money you make in a business and put it back into the business, and that's what the Pohlads are doing with the Twins. The issue is
you're putting a salary cap on you when you don't need to.
Well,
and you're crying wolf at the same time. Now, I agree, the system is screwed up.
Yeah, no question.
I'm not going to defend that.
That's why there's revenue sharing. You get plenty of money. You should be able to keep your core players. If Buxton and Sano and Rosario and, say, Kepler, Jose Barrios, they develop the way they should, you got to keep these guys. Well, this is why I'm willing to give them a chance, because all we kept hearing when they were in the Dome, if we had a stadium that generated more revenue, brought more people out, and plus revenue sharing, we'll be able to keep those guys when we get in the new stadium. We won't lose guys like Johan Santana or Torrey Hunter to free agency. So I'm holding to it. I am holding to it. Absolutely.
But there's a caveat to that in baseball, because I can get revenue sharing, and I can put it into my scouting. I can put that money into my drafting. I can put that money into my facilities. I can put that money into my minor leagues. I can save that money for down the road. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily there to go spend on free agents. Right. I think that's where some people lose it too.
Because football, it's like you have a salary cap annually.
And you also have a floor.
Yeah.
You have percentage of the revenue that you have to spend on.
Which Red McCombs was even hesitant to do the Chiefs.
So but the caveat to that is in baseball, you've got 6 minor league teams, you've got international scouting now. You can put your money a bunch of different places. I'm all for using money from somewhere else to get a winning team. I mean, to me...
Yeah, but that's an unreasonable expectation is what I'm saying.
They got the team. It comes... to me, if I'm sitting there, if I'm David Glass owning the Kansas City Royals, and I'm the former CEO of Walmart, it's pretty hard for me to walk around and say, well, I'm just too poor. I just can't keep it. The fans aren't going to buy that. Nobody's going to buy. Ask for public money to build a stadium, not in Kansas City, but in other places. It's pretty hard to cry about it. Mm-hmm. George Steinbrenner was never the wealthiest owner in baseball.
Yeah, but that's the New York City market. Look at the TV money. The TV money alone.
That's because of the Yes Network.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. It's like you don't have that here. That's the biggest part of the issue. People always equate attendance and ticket sales as like, wow, you're selling all these. No, it's the TV money. That's why the Dodgers, if they wanted to, could spend all that kind of money. I mean, LA and New York, these are these huge markets.
Never owned the Dodgers. There's a total conflict of interest. Fox Sports North. Sorry, but it was.
Well, there is another issue. Yeah.
So you have the teams that are able to do that because of the TV revenue and things like that. But when you look at the teams that go about it differently, like the Twins did this year, like Houston had to do, I think, over the long haul, going from being so terrible to being able to win a World Series. I mean, what's the difference in philosophy?
Part of it is, you look at Houston, they have, as Andrew mentioned, developed a lot of their own players. I mean, young players like Jose Altuve and Carlos Correa, George Springer. These are guys that have been developed in the system. Dallas Keuchel. Then they'll go out and make some savvy free agent moves. I mean, Brian McCann, he's a pretty good catcher, in his 30s. Carlos Beltran, he's 40 years old, but he's a veteran presence. He's been in the postseason before. But then you need, sometimes it requires a little luck. Who knew that Charlie Morton had what he had in him? How huge was he for them in this series? He was big.
Especially Game 7. They let him go longer as a reliever.
Exactly right. And they signed him as a free agent prior this year. 2 years, $14 million. You hardly heard of it. It was so under the radar because he had some injury troubles. But they said, you know what, we'll take a flyer on him. And all of a sudden he's throwing 95, 96 in the series.
To your point, I'm going to take it back a ways. Go to the 91 Twins.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Morris came off an 18-loss season.
Yep.
Right.
He won 15, but, I mean, the Tigers weren't very good in 1990.
Right.
And he was 35 years old. Chili Davis was coming off an injury-riddled season.
Yep.
He hit 29 home runs for us. And we had the core guys.
Yeah.
And go back to the 87 team. You had Viola, Blyleven, Puckett, Bernansky, Gaetti, Herbeck. What were we missing? Jeff Reardon, Dan Gladden. Then we made moves to bring in Don Baylor and Joe Niekro and Al Newman and all these other guys that were parts of that. Juan Berenguer was a guy who got dumped. Yeah. I mean, and there was. It seems like every half decent team is going to have that core 5, 6, 7 guys. And I think my argument is those guys have to come from within. I think they have to come from within. You're not going to go out and spend $100 million signing 5 or 6 star players.
The Yankees tried that after they won their 4 World Series, and they didn't win another World Series from 2000 to 2009, which is a long time to them. For us, it's pie in the sky.
Still haven't won it since then.
Yeah. So, but from 2000 to 2009, it took for them to win a World Series because when they were winning those 4 World Series in 5 years, they went out and got guys like Paul O'Neill or Charlie Hayes. Scott Brocious was the MVP of the 1998 World Series. I mean, it's guys that can
MVP nobody would remember.
Right. Yeah. So you get guys that come in and they rise to the occasion, and like with Charlie Morton, nobody expected Charlie Morton to do what he did for the Astros this year, much less in the postseason. So it does require a little luck, but luck. You say luck, but then it's also good scouting because you have to have a scouting department that goes to the front office and says, I think this Charlie Morton still has a little something. Let me show you what I'm seeing here. And then and then, of course, the front office says, well, $14 million for 2 years for a starting pitcher. I mean, that's nothing in today's game. I mean, Mike Pelfrey is making $10 million a year for crying out loud.
Mike Pelfrey made $4 million, had the worst ERA in baseball, and then signed for 5.5.
Yeah, heck of a deal.
Right.
have that problem.
Yeah. So that's why I say. I mean, this is what Houston has done. They developed their core players. They've made some savvy trades, and I think that's what the Twins are looking to do. I mean, I think the Twins, kind of looking ahead, their everyday batting order, I think, is pretty solid, is in place, and then what they really need to do is address, obviously, their pitching, because the one thing we kept hearing during their glory years is like, well, we're not, they didn't have that guy that could strike out 10, 11 guys per 9 innings. It was the pitch to contact. And we've kind of seen now, okay, that's getting a little old. It just doesn't work. All right. I mean, other than Santana and Barrios in the rotation, who can you really rely on going forward? I mean, Gibson had a nice last 5-6 weeks, but he's going to be 30 years old.
He is what he is.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, when you look at the Twins, they have they probably had 30 guys pitch for them this year. Maybe 7 of them were major league caliber.
Right.
And that's the good news, is you actually, because you had to use so many pitchers, you found some guys that have potential and have created competition now coming out of spring training. Alan Buznitz has a live arm. Ryan Presley's got electric stuff. If the guy could ever figure it out, that guy's a potential closer.
Rogers.
Yeah, Taylor Rogers was a very good left-handed specialist. Who else came up? Matt Belia was their closer.
Chuckling at the specialist.
Yeah, he's their left-handed specialist, comes in and gets a couple of...
He might as well join them in the bullpen. He's not a starter.
Yeah, they like his stuff. He just has to pick up the pace of play a little bit. You talk about 4-hour games. When Mejia pitches, you could just pretty much guarantee.
See, that's the art of pitching. You mentioned pitch to contact, and I think a lot of Twins fans cringe when they hear that.
Yeah, battle their tails off.
However, I've always said this, there's more than one way to pitch.
Yeah.
And, Greg Maddux didn't have a 98-mile-an-hour fastball and found a way to win 355 games. There's, unfortunately, and I think this leads into the sabermetrics people, that there's one way to pitch. If you don't have a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, we don't want you.
Right.
And every pitcher throws the same 3 pitches. And there's, again, this prototype of a pitcher we have to have. And I think that I've always taken quality over quantity.
Right.
Which is why I don't want a 13-man pitching staff. I don't want half the guys out there belong in Double-A.
Yeah, would Dan Quisenberry ever make it into the majors today?
I said this, Greg Maddux would be a 12th-round pick.
Yeah.
There's no way a guy 5'11", who throws it 90, would be drafted in the second round today.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I think they're looking at...
Okay, he's a Hall of Famer. Maybe
of course. I know, I hear you. But what teams are, we talk about copycat leagues, and people saw...
Plagiarism everywhere.
What the Royals did. The Royals shortened the game to a 6-inning game. The 2 years they went to the World Series... If they led after 6 innings, it was over. You had Kelvin Herrera in the 7th, Wade Davis in the 8th, Greg Holland in the 9th. It was over. Yeah, and they went to the World Series twice, almost won in 2014, and did win in 2015. And so you're looking at that, and it's like, with these pitchers that can throw 96, 97, we can preserve them, only let them go 5 or 6 innings. I know it's a big pet peeve of yours, we'll definitely get into that. But if they can just give us 5 or 6, then all of a sudden, we've got these 3 guys that throw 99 in bullpen. It's lights out.
True.
And I'm not saying that's my preference. I want to see a starter go deeper into games, and there are some starters that get special dispensation. Guys like Steven Strasburg or Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, maybe not so much in the postseason, but in the regular season, you have guys getting the opportunity. Irvin Santana had 5 complete games, which was nothing in the 80s. But this day and age, that's a big deal, especially for the Twins.
Anytime the Twins bullpen doesn't come in, I would argue that's a plus.
Yeah,
it is.
Of course, it is. It is. And here's the thing.
But here's the problem. Let me just give some insight to that. You talk about the best pitchers doing that. If a pitcher's never allowed to go into the 8th or go into the 9th, how do we know that they can or can't do that?
They look
the
at
other part of it. Here's the thing. Pitchers today are trained to give it everything they've got. They pitch the number 9 batter in the order the same way they pitch the number 3 batter in the order. Jack Morris always says this on comedy. You don't have to show every pitch to every hitter. By the time your third at bat comes around, I've seen it all. I've seen how hard you throw. I've seen the pattern you throw it in. If it's 0-2, every Twins pitcher throws a pitch that bounces 3 times. I know what's coming.
Right.
It's all predictable now. And when you talk about, and I talk about there's more than one way to win a game, yeah. First off, the guys who throw at 99 are the guys who get hurt all the time.
Yeah.
And I think those players drive me nuts. Find me a knuckleballer that's had a Tommy John surgery. Nobody. I mean, there's more than one way to win a game. And yes, bringing 3 guys in is one way to do it. But another great way to do it? Not ever call on those 3 guys.
Well, I think, and here to bounce off that, what drives me nuts is this 100 pitch limit. That's the magic number, 100 pitches. I have no idea. But you can see every auxiliary scoreboard in every stadium has a pitch count. So guarantee the starter sees that. And so if he sees he's starting to approach that 100 pitch mark, guess what he's going to do? He knows he's going to be out of there pretty soon. So all of a sudden, he's going to kind of lose track of the fundamentals, maybe open it up and try to finish strong. And all of a sudden, he's walking guys, he's giving up home runs. This is what drives me absolutely crazy because I think, and again, I'm no doctor, physiologist, or anything like that, but I have a theory that if these guys aren't allowed to go much past 100 pitches and never have experience getting much past 100 pitches, all of a sudden, if you try to extend them beyond that just a time or two, it's a disaster.
Well, and I've said before, we have pitchers throwing fewer innings, fewer pitches than ever, yet we have more arm injuries.
Right.
So show me the correlation between arm injuries and pitching.
They had the same arm injuries back in the day. It's just they didn't have the high-tech medical equipment to see it, and they just say, ice it down, you'll be good. Seriously, that's what they did.
Sandy Koufax had probably
right.
Yeah.
That's why he had to retire at 35 years old. He just had
31.
nothing. Yeah, 31. Yeah.
66.
Yeah.
I don't
because
know.
they just had no equipment to see the damage. It's like, just put some ice on it, you'll be fine. Seriously.
I just feel though that like I said, I mean, if the object is to throw it as hard as humanly possible, at some point your arm's going to feel it.
But a guy like Verlander, I can't remember, I can count on one hand probably the number of times in his 12-year career he's been in the Sable to still have a few fingers left over.
Yes.
And this guy, when he's pitching in the 7th or 8th, still throws mid to upper 90s. Why? He's pacing himself. He's not trying to strike out 15 guys.
In 91, he was throwing at 94. That would be like 99 now.
Right.
Back in the 9th, 10th inning. And he was a complete game pitcher. He had that mentality, this is my game. I'm going to win or lose it. And I think today's pitchers don't have that. I think they think their job is to hand it off to one of the 14 pitchers in the bullpen.
Right.
And it's
look at you talk about the 91 series after it was the runners when Lonnie Smith lost track of the ball.
Second and third, nobody else.
Yeah, he didn't give up a ball didn't leave the infield after that. The rest of the game.
Justice Sid Bream grounded to a double play.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the kind of thing today. I mean, there's no way Jack Morris would be in that game.
No.
John Smoltz would have pitched a rookie, or what was he in, like his 3rd year?
Yeah.
He would have never been in there.
Yeah, John Smoltz was 24 years old. Yeah.
It's just, that's why I say that I reminisce to the 91 series, and of course the 87 series. I maintain Frank Viola was probably in trouble of being pulled.
Yeah.
And probably would have been today. He probably would have pitched 3 or 4 innings, but he righted the ship and was able to win it. And I just love seeing that kind of gutty performance. And I just want today's players have so much talent. I mean, I think the talent has done this in base. I'm going up and up and up for those of you listening. I think the talent is as great as it's ever been. But it's got to be maximized. Mm-hmm. And I feel that whether it's hitting or pitching, I don't think we're seeing that. Again, I think there's a computer prototype that is out there based on 1 or 2 statistics, and anything beyond that is just not relevant.
Another issue is that you have teams wanting to protect their investment. I mean, a starting pitcher like Max Scherzer, David Price, Justin Verlander, they're making $25 to $30 million a year. And so they're given a directive, from the front office down to the field saying, hey, we got to protect this investment. If this guy blows out an elbow and he's out for a year or two, that's $30 million a year we're losing.
True, but there's no evidence that pitching another inning is going to blow out his elbow.
I agree. I'm not saying I agree with that philosophy. I'm just telling you.
That's why you hire a manager.
Right.
I think Andy McPhail called up Tom Kelly and said, get Jack Morris out of that game. No.
Tom Kelly was older than Andy McPhail, so he could play rank. Boy wonder Andy McPhail.
That's the problem, too, is managers not being allowed to manage.
But the thing I do admire about some old school men, like Paul Molitor, old school baseball guy, he is actually allowing himself to learn more about the analytics. Now, some people complain that Mauer bunts too much, that he still has that old school bunting mentality inside of him. And some people say he bunts too much. I don't necessarily agree with that, but he still has that kind of leeway to do what he needs to do or do what he wants, but he meets with the front office guys on a daily basis. There's just access to more information. It's not good or bad. It's just more. And why not take advantage of it? Why not get as much insight as you can about every single player? That's really what it...
Boy, do I want to answer that.
Go ahead. Please do.
Well, I think you're taking the human element out of baseball. I think it's analyzed to the point where, again, okay, let me back up a second. If you ask me what I don't like about baseball, the guys who used to run baseball teams, and I'm not talking that long ago. Now, look, I'm over-exaggerating, but this is our show, so we can do that. The guys who were general managers and all that, they were former scouts, they were former managers, they were former players. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were a guy like Andy McPhail, who was a third generation. His grandpa owned part of the Yankees. Lee McPhail was the American League president.
Yep.
They were baseball guys. And I'm not saying only baseball guys could be in that bubble. So I think sometimes you have to think outside the box.
Well, that's why they're getting so many mathematicians out of Harvard now.
But the guys running baseball teams today are being hired as chief of baseball operations, or whatever you want to call it, is the kid you picked on in second grade. It's the kid that had sinus problems and ate glue, and if they walked into a men's locker room, they'd be whistling "Stranger in Paradise." That's who's running teams, and they don't know baseball real well, but they know computers, they know math, they know situations. And to them, there's one answer to every question.
Right.
But that's why it's good to work in tandem with an old school baseball guy like Mahler. He could bring the baseball aspect to it, and they can bring their analytics to it. It does, like you said, we've talked about this. It shouldn't be the Bible, but it definitely can be a supplement to what you're doing in the field.
I'm going to just take a second and catch our listeners up on this. I want to bring up a couple points that I thought were huge. Andrew said that baseball is all about being a copycat, plagiarism, which is what we always say on this podcast about cities too.
Sabermetrics, it's the Met Council of baseball.
Wow!
Yeah.
Wow! I would go that far.
We'll get
I'm
there,
go that far.
but you know, it's people who just copy what the last guy did. I mean,
West Coast offense. How many NFL teams ran that during the 90s?
Yeah.
Tried to copy the 49ers.
So that's what cities do too. That's what governments do. They copy each other, and it's the originators who come up with a new way to do things, who think outside the box, that actually get the job done. And we look at a team like the Twins or a team like the Astros that are growing a nucleus within their organization, and they're taking time to build this rather than just going out and buying the best talent or picking somebody up and retaining them through money.
That is a great point, because that was in essence the motivation, the inspiration behind these analytics and sabermetrics, because the Oakland A's were not going to be able to compete with the big money Boston Red Sox or New York Yankees, so they have to go out and get guys that you don't spend a lot of money for, but they can serve a purpose where you can put yourself in a position to score runs where you're not going to be a premier run producer driving in 120 runs.
But here's the thing, you want to bring up Moneyball?
Yeah.
Okay, the movie?
Right.
You know what I have a problem with?
Huh.
Nobody mentions they had Barry Zito, Mark Mulder, and Tim Hudson.
Agreed 100%. Agreed 100%.
Wait a minute. They didn't win because they signed Scott Hatteberg to a one-year deal. He was that last part. He was that Al Newman or that Randy Bush on the team.
Right.
They don't win it. They haven't won anything since, despite all their Moneyball talk. They haven't won anything since. You want the Tampa Bay Rays one? Because they picked number 1 7 years in a row. At some point, you're going to end up with David Price or Evan Longoria or somebody like that. Yeah. So I know that is big on those teams, but ultimately, you don't get the talented players. You can have all the mathematicians you want.
Right.
But you just have a shorter window, to your point. When they had Hudson, Mulder, and Zito, it's like, no way are we going to be able to afford to keep these guys in 3-4 years when they become free agents. We need to win now, and we need to have a lineup. It's not going to remind you of the 1927 Yankees, but if you can score 3-4 runs a game with that pitching staff, you're in good shape. That's my point, is you need something to supplement your lineup, and you're not going to. They couldn't re-sign Jambi. Who else did they lose? Like Jermaine Dye, Johnny David, Miguel Tejada.
Yeah. So I'm going to tie this back again into politics. That we, as conservatives, have gone out and tried to bring somebody in with no experience that we haven't raised up from the bottom, that we don't have as part of our core team. Think about the people that we run for governor. Think about the people that we run for U.S. representative. Think about the people that we run sometimes for our state senate and representative seats.
Now you're ruining my plan to run for governor in 2022.
Why? You have tons of money?
No, I have a few dollars.
But that's what we do, and we continually lose because we don't raise these people up from the bottom, which is what we preach all the time, is that we have to create a farm team, and we have to work with these folks, and we have to get them experience and name recognition, and we've got to get them in there governing, and they're going to have some strikeouts, and they're going to, they're going to hit some, doubles. They're going to hit some triples. They're going to hit some home runs.
The strikeouts raise my blood pressure.
Right. So, but it's going to happen as you learn the process, and whether a strikeout is just you screwed up at somebody's front door while you're door knocking, or you lose an election, or you put your name on a piece of legislation that stinks. You live and you learn, and you go through this process, hopefully, of getting better, and you raise up these people from the inside that all of a sudden I think have a better shot at winning, other than bringing somebody in that has a lot of money, that's never done it, that President Trump being the exception to the rule here, that you bring in a businessman who has a lot of money, that has the time to go take and run a campaign, but has not come up through the ranks, does not have the experience.
So what are you saying? I can't run for governor?
I'm not saying that at all.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm saying that because we do that, we don't fare as well as the people that have brought people up through the ranks, got the experience, created the farm team. Just like the Twins, just like the Astros, they've brought these people up. They have created an environment to make them better players.
Now here's the thing. The thing. Can I just ask this about the Twins?
Okay.
You think they're going to make the extra 3 or 4 moves to? Like I said to me, I don't want a team that's competitive. I hear that and I cringe.
Right.
I'll take a world championship and then 4 losing seasons. I'll take that over this perpetual playing for tomorrow. Oh, we just want to be in it.
Get to the first round and lose.
And I think Twins fans have been conditioned to accept that. And I always tell them, look, fans 30 years ago would never accept this. Why are we accepting this now? Why are we accepting this perpetual being slightly above average? I mean, think back to this.
Right.
Think back to 2006 or 2010 or whatever. Pick one year you want to pick in the aught years. Mm-hmm. Put 2 more players on that team, and do you think that team could have gone further than they did? We had a good core, and we were missing... we got the 1-year cast off to come in and just get us to somewhere, but we never made that big move.
Well, no, and that's a great point, but they bring in somebody that they need for a specific purpose, right? And this is kind of Moneyball, kind of not, because you're like micromanaging all these statistics. Here it's like, I need somebody that can hit home runs. I need somebody that...
How many stats do we need? I mean, that's what I keep coming back
and when you're tying it back to politics, though, I mean, just because a guy has a lot of money, should he run for office? Or maybe he should fund somebody's campaign. Maybe Maybe his son, who is going through college as a business person, would be a good campaign manager. Maybe, these are things I think that putting a team together, where are we lacking? How can you complete that cycle versus, hey, I've got money, I want to run for office. Let's make me the face of the party for this election cycle. I think that's where we've screwed stuff up. And I think it's a good analogy, going back to baseball, that growing something from the inside and then bringing in the other parts from the people you have around you
I think
is helpful.
I think it's a good strategy, but Brad touched on something earlier. You can't miss on those a third overall draft pick.
Well, exactly, and that's
how many years in the '90s did we draft Matt Moses and
this is where we fall down, though, as we go through our caucus and convention systems. That's like our draft day. We should be looking at the people that come out to caucus, come out to conventions. Who's sharp? Who can we bring in? And
you and I didn't miss too many times.
No, that's our draft day. And for all of you BPOUs, that should be your draft day as well.
But you talk about the Twins were doing that. I mean, they had those years, 7 consecutive years, or I guess it would be 8 consecutive years from '93 to 2000, where they had a losing season. But they were building up, their farm system. That's where they got guys like Torrey Hunter and Jock Jones. And then when Knobloch became disaffected, they got a good young pitcher in Eric Milton, and Christian Guzman was a good shortstop for them. And then Minkiewicz was a good hitting first baseman until Morneau eventually elevated on up. And then they drafted Joe Mauer, maybe went overall, I think it was 2001, I think it was. So they were making those moves, and Joe Mays and Brad Ratke were already there and making progress in the 90s. And then 2001, it kind of came all together. They missed the playoffs, but they had that core in place to where Tom Kelly could say, okay, I got one last chance to actually manage a legitimate team. I'm going to move on, hand off the reins to Gardenhire. And, they had that run where they had, 6 division titles in 9 seasons, first 9 seasons under Gardenhire. Yeah. So, unfortunately, they just kept running into the Yankees. They couldn't get over that Yankees barrier,
Well, that's true to a point. I still say in a 5-game series, anything can happen.
Yeah, they beat Oakland in 02, and then they actually won Game 1 in Yankee Stadium in 03 and 04, and then lost the next 3. They just fell apart.
In 06, they
swept by the A's.
Yeah, 2 of them were here. I mean,
that was inexplicable. That one is, to me, is the most inexplicable, because you had
the 6 team was the best team we had.
You had
the MVP. Santana won the Cy Young.
Yes.
First batting title.
Yes.
That was the best team we've had since '91.
Yes, and it was inexplicable. They never led. Oakland was okay. They weren't great.
Thomas, and they had I can't even remember who was still pitching for them.
Yeah.
It was the Rich Harden days or something.
Exactly, yeah. So that one was inexplicable, but for the, people talk about, well, they just can't, for some reason, there's a lot of theories why they can't get over the hump against the Yankees. Here's just one incontrovertible one. The Yankees are a better team.
Oh, yeah.
They're a better team. There's nothing. It's like, the Twins are just mind blooped because whenever they play the Yankees are intimidated. No, the Yankees were a better team. It's not difficult, folks.
I agree with that. I do think sometimes the Twins were damn close to them, though. And there were years where
2010.
I know the unbalanced schedule.
2010, yes.
The records that are quite reflective, but there were years where man for man they weren't that much better. It wouldn't have shocked me had the Twins won a 5-game series.
The problem is that, you look at the last 2 playoff series before this most recent one. 2009, of course, they got in via game 163, and then 2010, first year at Target Field, they actually had home field against the Yankees, home field advantages against the Yankees. Both years, Morneau was gone because of in-season injuries. And 2010 is when he had the concussion. He was never the same after that. It was a concussion halfway through. He was hitting .345 with 18 homers, 60 runs batted in, halfway point. At the halfway point. He was on his way, and unfortunately needed a head. Kadire had a good season, was a good first baseman. People were like, well, we don't need Morneau. We'll do fine with Kadire. Yeah, tell me another one after you get swept by the Yankees. So, and another one was Joe Nathan. You look at from 2004 to 2009, that 6-season span. Compare Joe Nathan's regular season stats to Mariano Rivera's regular season stats. They're almost identical. What was the great separator? postseason play.
Yeah.
Joe Nathan in postseason couldn't get it done. No. Exactly right.
But,
so
but you know what? He was the man. It was the right decision to give him the ball.
Yes.
So I'll live and die with Joe Nathan. It was the right decision to give Jeff Reardon the ball. It was the right decision to give Aguilera the ball. Doesn't work out every time, but it was the right move.
Right.
But, I want to go back to something about... I got to go back on my sabermetrics rant here.
Yeah, we need to hear you out on
okay,
this. So.
Here's my issue with it. To me, what I find is what I see in baseball right now, and maybe this is just me because I long for the days where you made a lineup the way you made, where Pete Rose and Joe Morgan got knocked in by Johnny Bench and by Tony Perez.
He sounds like my grandfather. Never got over the fact that designated hitter came to the American League.
I'm all right with that, except Antonio Olivas. But I don't see teams being... I see too much of... There's an obsession out there to create a new stat, to create create one stat that's the be-all, end-all. I got into a Twitter argument at the All-Star break where I didn't like some of the selections, and I sort of blurted out why. And I got one thing thrown in my face over and over. Well, their OPS. Look at their OPS. I'm like, you know what OPS measures? Walks and home runs. There's a little bit more to the game than that, don't you think?
It's on base plus slugging.
Right.
Slugging is more than just home runs. On base is more than just walks.
But, to me, I look at everything. OPS doesn't tell me if a guy struck out 250 times.
Right.
OPS doesn't tell me if he grounded into 50 double plays. OPS doesn't tell me if he got a guy from third home when there was one out and the team needed a run. What it tells me is that...
But guys with high OPSs, that's not what they're in there to do. They're not in there to move runners over. They're in there to drive in runs. They're supposed to be your premier run producer.
Depends on the situation. If your team, if the count's 3-1, go ahead and swing for Wisconsin. If it's 0-2, why not go in there and get a base hit and get on base for the next guy? Everybody in the lineup's striking out 150 times. They're all number 5 hitters. Somebody has to do something different.
But you're talking about moving a runner over. You're going to bunt Aaron Judge?
No, I'm not. But if it's 0-2 and we need that run, he should not be swinging for a home run.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah, there's a different approach.
But he is.
Yeah.
Watch him play. Watch the first baseman from the Dodgers, Ballinger.
Yeah.
How many Game 7 he came up his first 3 at-bats with 2 runners on base?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't make contact. Struck out 17 times.
He had 2 games before that where he struck out 4 times.
Right. But, imagine if it was 2 strikes on him. Dodgers needed a run or 2 early in the game. What if he'd gotten a single?
Right.
And somebody would have scored. But no, it's my job to hit home runs. No, it's your job to win and to hit and play to the situation. And that's what we've lost. And so many things have been taken out of the game because of that. I knew last night.
But that's supposed to be
last night.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to see a double steal. I wasn't going to see a hit and run. I wasn't going to see any of those elements that are part of the game too. And they're not always in some analytic that you can compress into a computer. I watched the 87 Cardinals playing the Twins.
Right.
Okay. Vince Coleman got on first base. There was all these situations. Are you going to steal? What pitch are we going to pitch out? What's Ozzie Smith going to do when he's hitting? There was a different way to win it. And nobody on their team threw it 99. Jack Clark threw
except for Todd Worrell.
Huh? Well, Worrell threw pretty fast.
But yes, good. To your point, yes.
So, Oakland A's, you got Ricky Henderson leading off. Carney Lansford batting behind him. Great hitter, contact hitter, hit and run guy. Hit it to the opposite field. Then you got Aaron Judge hitting second. What's he doing hitting second?
Yeah, I don't.
208 strikeouts and he's batting second?
I don't understand that. 50? Did he have 50 home runs or something?
How was he not fourth in the lineup?
Yeah. I will agree with you on this. I don't understand the new configurations of these lineups where you have a leadoff guy hitting 30 home runs. I don't understand that either.
Ricky Henderson should always be your first guy in the lineup. You take your fastest guy who can get on base.
I just remember the years of Nicky Rivers leading off for the Yankees. He maybe hit.
70s.
I don't think he hit 50 home runs in his career, unless Willie Wilson, the majority of his home runs were inside the park home runs,
big ballpark in Kansas City.
Yeah, right. So I will agree with you on that. I don't understand some of these lineup configurations. Again, I can't emphasize enough, I don't believe analytics and sabermetrics is the Bible, but I believe it can be useful to supplement what a lot of these managers are doing. There's still some old school managers like Francona and Molitor who still like to do the fundamentals. And again, the biggest criticism of Molitor is he bunts too much.
Well, I mean, I agree. Sabermetrics can be a part of it, but I'll tell you what we're heading toward. And this is where I think it's going. It's heading toward, we're going to have to expand the rosters at some point. Because managers have, with their lineups, they have no flexibility anymore because they got to roster 13 pitchers. Mm-hmm. So I got nobody to pinch hit, nobody can pinch run. You don't see double switches. You don't see anything like that. I don't got the bench guys.
Right.
You don't have a bench of Don Baylor and Royce Smalley and Gene Larkin and Bobby. You can't carry those guys anymore because you've got to carry a bunch of guys who should be in Double-A out in your bullpen because analytics tell you to bring in this lefty when it's 47 degrees out and it's a Wednesday. You got to bring in the left-hander to face this guy. Right. So there's to me it's taken, while it's maybe helped some teams, and there's always going to be new things that happen in any sport. Football's advanced, or whatever you want to call it. I think we're heading towards expanded rosters. We're heading towards, I think playoff baseball's changed forever. I got some theories on how to change it back, but I think it's headed towards 7 guys are going to pitch every single game.
Yeah,
that's where we're going.
I can understand that a little more in postseason. Regular season, you obviously have to pace yourself. It's 162 games, but in the postseason, especially in the World Series, you have so little margin for error. You can't say, we lost a couple straight, but we'll bounce back. Well, no, if you lose 2 straight games in the World Series, you're in big trouble. So it's a whole different mindset when it comes to postseason play. I agree with you to the extent some of these managers kind of panic a little bit and go with too quick of a hook. But at the same time, they're seeing these guys over 5, 6, 7 game series, and they've been seen by the opponent practically every game, and they just go with who has the hot hand.
Right, but again, there's got to be some sort of what I call it the race to the bullpen.
Yeah.
Now, I think bullpen pitchers are the worst pitchers in they're the worst players in baseball. Not good enough to be starters, not good enough to be closers. Like I said, half of them don't belong there.
Yeah.
And if I'm managing, and I'm on a World Series team, I got to have half-decent starting pitching. You're not going to get there. Over 162 games, you're not going to win without a couple of good starters. You're just not.
Right.
And ultimately, they're the guys who get you there. So why is it when it's 1-1 in the 3rd inning of Game 3, am I pulling my starter to bring in some guy who probably shouldn't be in the main? Okay, he throws 98. That doesn't mean he's going to get you back.
Do you have a specific example, or is this just kind of a scenario you're concocting here?
It's more of a scenario.
Okay. No,
I saw it last year. I saw Andrew Miller get overused.
Oh, yes. That cost him Game 7, in my opinion. Yep.
And but what I see is that happening more, not less.
Right.
I see the norm now is the first time there's 2 base runners.
In the postseason, though. Yeah.
I'm pulling that starter. I'm up 2-0, and I'm pulling the starter in the 4th inning. Why? I mean, why not let him try to get out of that? And if a run or 2 scores, it's not the end of the world. If you're a World Series team, you should be able to score a run or 2. And I just see pitchers, the second that they, especially the starting pitchers, the second there is a 15-pitch inning, the second there's a hit batsman, I see somebody warming up in the bullpen. And I'm like, what the heck?
There may be more to it than that, I think. And again, it's just a total guess. I could be 100% wrong, but the manager knows the psyche of his pitcher and saying, I could just tell by his body language or things he's saying that it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't know. Again, it's just a theory. I could be totally wrong, and it could be exactly like you say, where they just get a little, they panic a little bit, because this still, again, I didn't really have a dog in the fight last year between the Cubs and Indians. Both were very compelling stories. But when Andrew Miller kept giving up every single game, and they were bringing him in the fifth inning in the LCS, I'm like, what are you doing? This is a guy This is a guy that's a legit closer, and you're bringing him in the fifth inning? I didn't understand that.
I to this day don't understand that.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I love what Terry Francona did. His track record in Boston speaks for itself, and obviously what he's done with the Indians with that core of players that they've brought up has been tremendous. Unfortunately, they got knocked out in the division series this year, but I didn't get that.
The manager let Kurt Schilling pitch with a bloody sock, and clearly injured.
Right.
And the second Trevor Bauer gives up an infield single. Boom! There's somebody in there.
Are you talking about last year?
Yeah, not this year.
Okay, because the drone got him. Remember his pinky fingers dripping with blood because he cut himself fixing a drone or something? Yeah, it was just bizarre. So it's not going to happen tonight, Trout. Well, this year I think what cost the Indians was Corey Kluber, who was awful in both his starts. This is your ace, probably the American League Cy Young Award winner, him or Chris Sale, and he was awful both starts.
Yeah, but you know what? Like I said with your number one starter, he's the guy who got you there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not suggesting you don't pitch him, but he didn't come through for him. He didn't.
But, unfortunately, that's going to happen to the best of them. And you're right, there isn't much margin for error, but I'm still one. Like I said, I take quality over quantity. I want to win and lose with my best guy. I mean, I go back, 87 Twins had 9 pitchers on their postseason team. Mm-hmm. Would we have won it if we would have taken out 4? Say Don Baylor wasn't on the team, Roy Smalley wasn't on the team, blah blah blah, and brought in 4 mediocre relievers. Would we have been a better ball club?
It was a given that in those days it was 3 starting pitchers and they were going on 3 days rest. That was it.
Yeah,
that was it.
I thought you saw better baseball, and I don't know why that can't happen today. If they're only going to go 3 innings, why can't you bring them back a couple days later?
I think when you see these trends and you can get a starting pitcher that can give you consistently 7-8 innings each time out, like a Max Scherzer, like a Steven Strasburg, and by the way, how the Washington Nationals continue to go belly up round and round year after year. Well, that's a different issue entirely. As soon as it was,
I don't get how they're not winning. It
was 2014 when they played the Giants in the division series, and they took out Jordan Zimmerman in the 9th. He was cruising. They took him out with 1 out in the 9th in a 1-0 game, and they ended up tying it. And as soon as the Giants tied it, I'm like, Nats are done. It's done. And they ended up losing that first game. And Matt Williams I think he got fired after that season. I'm not sure.
They got more talent. I don't know how they're not winning. They're just...
Yeah. I mean,
inexplicable.
When you've got a top 3 in your rotation of Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, and Gio Gonzalez, and you can't get out of the first round?
It's like watching the Braves in the 90s.
That's a great point,
They got to the World Series.
Eventually, yes.
But,
they finally got their win series, but, that and their everyday lineup
There's just, I can't put my finger on it, but there's just something missing from that team. I don't know if it's a gritty player like a Dan Gladden type or a Greg Gagne type, or they just don't have heart. It just seems like every time, like the whole team goes down when something bad happens. I can't describe them, but they have tremendous talent everywhere. And I for one, I have no idea how they haven't broken through to a World Series.
Yeah, Matt Williams, I was never impressed with Matt Williams as a manager. Dusty Baker, I've never...
Baseman.
Yeah, Dusty Baker, I've never been impressed with. Giants, Cubs, Reds, screwed them all up.
Oh, God.
I mean, some of the moves he made, I've never been impressed with Dusty Baker as a manager. Never. I've never understood the appeal.
He'll get a job.
I guess.
He can't screw up a 5th team.
That'd be terrible.
Yeah, Billy Martin. Who I love doesn't manager, but
Yeah, there are a lot of Twins fans who are fantasizing about him eventually coming back here. Never happened, though. Never happened.
Not while Calvin owned the team, anyway.
Yeah. Well, he was still... There was a 5-year window where he was alive while Carl Pohlad owned the team. Yeah, but
he always had a contract with Steinbrenner, even if he wasn't managing. Steinbrenner always, after he managed the A's,
Right.
and he came back in '83, Steinbrenner always had him move to some position or something because they were like the love-hate people of baseball. And there's a rumor, too, that when he died, when Billy Martin passed away, they were going to bring him back for a sixth.
I've heard that, yes.
That he was assembling a coaching staff and was going to meet with Steinbrenner after the New Year's.
Okay, interesting. Because he died like on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Yeah. There was a rumor going that he might have gotten a sixth chance between him and Lou Piniella, all those late 80s years.
Oh, boy. We kind of alluded to this at the outset, that's when the Yankees built up their core, because Steinbrenner always wanted to win right now. So he would trade his best prospects to bring in these veterans, and they never won anything. And then when he got suspended, like in the early 90s, for a couple of years.
92 was when they drafted Jeter.
Yeah, it's like they drafted these players, built them up, and then when he came back, it's like, we got a pretty good-looking team here.
They still had tremendous talent, though.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the 80s Yankees with Mattingly, Dave Winfield, Ron Guidry, Don Baylor was on that team, Ricky Henderson, it does kind of amaze me that they never won one stinking division title.
That's a good point, yeah.
I don't know how it didn't happen. Rick Rhoden, they had Dave Rigetti was their closer. I mean, they had a really...
That was, to me, it's a tragedy, and I use the word tragedy within the context of baseball, not like overall in a general sense, because that's kind of overstating it, but a tragedy within the context of baseball that Don Mattingly, brilliant career, won multiple batting titles, unfortunately his back gave out in the mid-90s. They won a World Series in 1981, the Yankees did. 2 years later, Mattingly started his big league career, retired in 95, and they won the World Series again the next year. I mean, the poor guy just missed the periphery both the beginning and the end of his career, just missed winning a World Series.
It is too bad because, he was an MVP, too, in 85.
Yes.
I think he's one of the top 12, 15 Yankees ever, which is saying a lot. But he'll always be lower because he never got a chance to play on the big stage. I mean, you'll never put him with the Yankee greats, even though if you look at his per year statistics, outstanding. But he'll never be up there because he never got the Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Mantle, Berra. He never got to play on the big stage.
And from the mid to late 80s, there wasn't many better as far as a premier run producer than Mattingly. And first baseman, Gold Glover, I mean, it just...
It was better than him, but Herbeck wasn't.
Yeah. Well, that? And there's a lot of guys, I think, that happens to him. And whether you're looking at Cal Ripken or,
Ted Williams, Ty Cobb.
He deserved to not win. But
Ripken did win a World Series second year, yeah.
Second year, yeah.
Well, Ty Cobb in his day, though. I mean, and this is another thing that kind of irks me is, we take political correctness on people who lived 100 years ago.
Right.
But, you want to talk about a guy who gave everything in like a Pete Rose type way. I think Ty Cobb is up there. And you think about it, when he retired, he owned the record for hits, doubles. He still has the batting average record, but I think total bases. He owned so many baseball records that, of course, have since been broken with 12 batting titles, which will never be broken. He's right up there in my book, and I know my book's pretty thin, not a lot of pages. But, I mean, he's right up there to me. I mean, I would have put him even ahead of some people because he played in a different era, the dead ball era, and you've got to factor that in when you're thinking about the best players. But he's right up there with anybody, short of Babe Ruth, probably.
Right.
And me, I think Lou Gehrig was the second greatest player of all time, which a lot of people would disagree with. But if you take into account that he retired at 35 and was probably dying before that, if you stop anybody's career at 35, none of them have better stats than Lou Gehrig.
Right.
Nobody, even Ruth. So it's maybe Ruth might be an exception, but because he started as a pitcher, his stats are a little skewed.
And how many years did Ted Williams miss because of World War II?
3 for World War II, a year and a half in Korea.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he would have had 700 home runs without a doubt.
Yeah, and Willie Mays, what would he have done had he not played in those horrible elements in San Francisco?
Yeah, the Polo Grounds weren't exactly the...
It wasn't a bandbox, yeah. So fun to speculate, yeah.
That's the great thing about baseball. You can think of it. How would Greg Maddux have pitched Babe Ruth? You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing. The eras are so fun to compare. And that's why I say there's more to baseball than stats. You look at the 60s where the pitching stats were skewed with the height of the mound and stuff like that. And you look at like 1930 where it was the biggest run-producing year with Hack Wilson's 190 RBIs and the dead ball era and comparing players. I could talk about baseball. I could do this till 4 o'clock in the morning talking about that because that's baseball's history is as big, if not bigger, than its present day.
Now, speaking of mound, then they lowered after Gibson had like a 1.12 ERA in 1968. I mean, that's
played 131 games.
That's just insane.
You know what's insane? He lost 9 games that year.
Yeah.
Now that's insane.
Yeah. So who was that? Denny McLain?
Yeah, he won 31 because the Tigers beat them. And Mickey Lolich was. He won 3 games, and then in 1969, when they restricted it to 15 inches, is when we've had. It's never been that out of whack toward the pitches since before Ruth.
Well, Jim Cott has talked about this. I still love to listen to Jim Cott. He's like 80 years old, but the guy is still as sharp as he ever was and as eloquent as he ever was. He talks about, we talk about the old days because, and I honestly think they do it to kind of poke the bear a little bit. Jim, back in your day, would they pull you out in an outing after 5-6 innings like this? He says, no. He says back in year after we won the went to the World Series, 1966, I pitched 300 innings, 41 starts. Think about this. I'm looking at the stats right now. 1966, Jim Cott.
25 wins, I think.
25 wins, 13 losses. So he got a decision in 38 of his 41 starts. First of all, no one starts 41 games anymore. First of all. And to get a decision in 38 of 41. And I remember, I think it was Bob Costas says, 300 innings? How did your arm feel at the end of it? And it was almost resentful. It felt great. It felt awesome, I mean, this is what they did. They did, and again, I've said it 100 times. I honestly believe they probably messed up some things pretty good in there, but it's like, hey, I'm living the American dream.
You had a winter job.
That's true. That is absolutely true. And that goes back to the whole point with there's so much money and hearing the horror stories of these arm problems. And again, I don't necessarily agree with the philosophy, but nevertheless, these organizations want to protect their investment, which, to your point, if you stretch these guys out and get them used to going 6, 7, 8 innings per start, they'll be fine. It's a very unorthodox throwing motion, and it's going to wreak havoc a little. I get that, but
it's been that way since 1876.
Right.
Here's the thing, though, or you have more than one kind of pitcher. Does everybody need to throw at 98?
No.
I mean, I've said this before. Where is a knuckleballer? You talk about a guy with a 20-year career who's not going to have an arm injury. Okay, give me Tim Wakefield. Where's that?
What type of pitchers have the longest careers? Knuckleballers and any type of lefty. Where are the lefty knuckleballers these days? These guys can pitch for 30 years. Seriously. I know it.
It was Charlie Huff when he retired.
Oh, he was with the Marlins, probably 45, because he pitched with the Dodgers in the 70s.
Yeah.
I remember him with the Texas Rangers.
I do, too.
He had a cup of coffee, a couple of years with the White Sox in there.
There was the Negro brothers. Of course, Joe played on the 87 Twins. Yeah. There was Tom Candiotti, who played for Cleveland for a long time and played for Toronto against the Twins and the ALCS. And there were even R.A. Dickey, maybe was the most recent one I could think of. And Tim Wakefield probably pitched with the Red Sox till he was maybe in his mid-40s, I want to say, because he came up with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he actually came up with Pittsburgh. He was like a 27-year-old rookie in 92.
As an outfielder and threw a knuckleball one day, and they're like, hey, you ever thrown that before?
Yeah, 45 years old in 2011, Tim Wakefield.
So you'd think that you'd invest in a variety of guys.
Yeah. And batters get used to seeing it. I mean, if everybody throws 95 to 100 miles an hour, I mean, batters are going to get used to it.
Well, and here's the thing. When they make contact with it,
right,
it goes a lot further, too.
It sure does.
So I might want some guys who don't give up those homes.
See, I agree with you there because we talk about how frustrated we get when you hear the Twins and their philosophy. Well, we pitch to contact. We've got a great defensive team, like Byron Buxton says, and nothing hits the ground but raindrops. Great defensive team. But why can't there be a balance? Get a guy or two that can throw mid to 9. You strike out 10, 11 batters per 9 innings. I know they don't grow on trees, but not every pitcher has to be like that. And then have a guy that, can maybe nip the corners. You're not going to get it. You're never going to find another Greg Maddux that did what he did. But find a semblance of that.
Well, but again, that's where organizations have, and I always criticize the Twins for going after the piranhas all the time. You can't, just as much as you can't win with 7 Adam Dunns in the lineup, you can't win with 7 Jason Tyners. But I used to
that's a blast from the past.
Year, really, the 19th pick of the draft? Mm-hmm. You couldn't, no offense on him, because I liked him coming up. Here's a guy who has limitations, is how I saw him. And that's not what you want in a first-round pick. If I'm going to grab a first-round pick, I don't want a guy who's at very best, he's an average starter at best. Yeah. Like the kid, but no way in the world. And baseball today, you draft over the world, okay?
Right.
And international is a little different, I guess, with international draft, something that they're contemplating.
Sure.
But I think they had a philosophy of, this is the kind of guy we want.
Right.
And that's who they were looking for, and you're not going to find something you're not looking for.
And I know growing up, I got Pat Putnam's baseball card too many years. He should have been shipped off long before.
I remember I had a baseball glove signed by Richie Zisk. So.
Richie Zisk.
Yeah, Rangers, Mariners.
Yeah. Sounds like a character from Airplane.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's become a much more international game. I mean, the influx of Japanese players that have come over since Ichiro kind of really got that going, and then you've got
Nomo and a couple of
yeah, exactly, and it's a good thing.
I also think though that and boy, I'm going to get some people who are mad at me for saying this, but it does kind of present baseball with a little bit of a marketing problem. How do I market a team where half the guys can't speak English? I mean, I just think, because again, I'm nostalgic. Okay, I go back to 1987. Okay, Tim Wadner played Brooklyn Center Little League.
Yeah.
Kirby Puckett lived in Brooklyn Park. Roy Smalley lived in Richfield. Now you get guys where I can't pronounce their name. I can't understand what they're saying. I saw a Nishioka guy get hit in the back with a cutoff throw, so there's a language barrier out on the field, I think, sometimes. Kind of weird how, I'm a believer in the clubhouse has got to be a certain way. I think winning teams have a certain kind of clubhouse, and it strikes me as odd the amount of, I got players from like 7 different countries all playing the game at the same time. It's got to be a challenge at times. Not even for baseball. It can be a marketing challenge.
I think from and there's also an issue with the cultural aspect of it too. Like a great example is a guy like Carlos Gomez. I mean, I still remember when he was with the Brewers in 2010. He came back to Target Field.
The Hardy trade.
They were down. The Brewers were down 15-0, and Carlos Gomez hits a 3-run homer and does the bat flip, and does the kind of like this to the crowd. Yeah, and it's just like people went nuts. It's like, okay, tomorrow whoever is the starting pitcher is going to bury a fastball in his back, and it's like, no, this is his culture. They are excited for when they do good things. They don't look at the score. They're not concerned with if they do something good. Yeah, it helps their team, but when you're down 15-0, not really. But this is they're excited when they do something well, and I think that's where the cultural barrier can come in too. Is they think you get American players that think he's trying to show up the other team. No, he's just excited for when he makes great plays. Like when Brewers came in a couple years later, Carlos Gomez was still with him. He was making great catches, and he was kind of doing the suck it chop, like Starter. I caught that ball, and people thought he was showing up his old team. No, he's excited. He made a great play, and that's what
opinions on that.
Yeah, well, go ahead. This is why we're here.
Well, I mean, it just sounds like it's a me thing. And then it'll be shown on SportsCenter 10.
But if he makes great catches and hits 3-run home runs, doesn't that help his team, though?
Yeah, but he can do that without dancing and beating his chest. And I don't want to make it the no fun league.
Right.
I don't want to penalize people for celebrating.
But the reason people get annoyed with that is they think he's trying to show up the other team, and it's not. That's not that at all.
I get that, but there's also...
And this is how brawls get started.
Well, baseball has its unwritten rules that I don't really like either.
No, I don't either.
I don't like throwing at a guy's head because of something that happened 2 years ago. I go back to Roger Clemens and Mike Piazza getting all pissy at each other when Piazza broke his bat and Clemens chucked it at him. Remember that?
Well, Clemens was revved up on greenies, I think. So.
He's a Hall of Famer to me.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That's a whole different discussion.
In fact, let's touch on that for a second.
Okay.
We can talk as long as we want to.
Okay.
And I don't like this debate. I know we're going to have it until A-Rod's time is up.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have it for another 20 years, maybe longer.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my thing. Okay, this is where I get upset at the media, I get upset at the owners, that we talk about the quote-unquote steroid era, or whatever you want to label it, from, say, the mid-'90s till maybe Barry Bonds' career ended, or whatever you want to say.
Sure.
Guys are still getting caught. There's 80-game suspensions out there. Guys are still getting caught.
Irvin Santana got suspended first half of the 2015 season, his first season with the Twins.
And, I mean, but you watch that era, and you watched everybody, writers included, owners, announcers, looking the other way. Baseball needed a jolt after what happened in the strike year.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
And we're going back, and the only people who pay a price for anything are the players.
Mm-hmm.
And I argue that some of these players belong in the Hall of Fame regardless. And I think you can't take an era. But look, if we're going to say that nobody from that era, that we're going to erase that, okay? What you're basically saying is, put it to you this way. Let's pretend Barry Bonds retired in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Is he a Hall of Famer in 1999?
Yes.
So why is he not a Hall of Famer if he takes steroids and breaks records and his hat size is 11 sizes bigger one year? Why is he now not a Hall of Famer? If we agree that he's a Hall of Famer before any allegations came, and I think 1999 is the earliest I can find. Even I read the book that was written on him. I don't 100% believe it, but and Bonds himself is not a likable character, and I get all that.
That's certainly part of it.
But that's not. There's a lot of people we don't like in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Well, yeah.
But I think that's a factor in him personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider. I mean, like those who are casting the ballots, baseball writers. You know, they were asked.
It's just writers anymore. It's people like Keith Law and people like that who never picked up a bat and wouldn't know it if it hit him.
But you're asking them to kind of be the moral arbiters. You know, are they deemed worthy? And they could say, to your point, I use that example a lot. Barry Bonds. Through 1989, that was 14 years in the big leagues. 99, I'm sorry, thank you. Through first 14 years in the big leagues, which brings us to that 99 season you're talking about, 445 home runs, which back then, you know, was still a lot of home runs for a career. Yeah. 288 lifetime batting average, 3 MVPs. 3.
Yeah, there's not many guys with 3 MVPs.
Yeah.
There's like 7.
And he got those 3 MVPs in 4 seasons with 2 different teams.
90, 92, 93. And
yes.
He was the runner-up in 91.
Yes, he was. Very good memory. Very good memory. So, and you could argue
300 guy, I think, by that time. They're very close.
And you could argue that when Jeff Kent won the MVP in 2000, it was because of Barry Bonds.
Absolutely.
So that's an example I use a lot. It's just like, okay, if he was rumored to start taking steroids because, you know, Barry Bonds, he came off as this kiss-my-butt superstar, cocky, arrogant, whatever. And all of a sudden, McGuire and Sosa in 1998 were grabbing the headlines, and he's like, I kind of miss all that fawning and adulation, you know. And then he starts doing what he does to, you know, get that attention back. So, yeah, to your point, I use that example a lot. If they would look at it subjectively and say, you know, well, look at his career early on. He was definitely a Hall of Famer had he retired after the 1999 season. He would only been 35 years old. And I'm saying, put it as a footnote on his plaque.
Yeah, I've said that too.
That's fine.
Same thing with Pete Rose.
Yeah.
I am torn on Pete Rose because when I started,
I say no on Pete Rose. I'm a hard no.
I'm torn because I don't want him in baseball, and I think but you know why we keep going back to Pete Rose is I always talk about playing the game the right way.
Yeah.
And I think Pete Rose got more out of less talent than anything you can find. And if you look at his playing career, okay, which was before any allegations against him, he deserves to be in as a player.
Sure.
I would agree with that.
Now,
as a
whether
player, yeah.
you write it on his plaque, I think is a good compromise. But I think he's going to die with no resolution to his situation.
Correct.
And it's his own doing.
Yep.
And I think some people don't like him. And I get it. You read the Dowd report. It's pretty hard to side with Pete Rose after reading that.
Bottom line is, any professional athletes, I don't look for moral guidance saying, listen, that part doesn't really bother me, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're a manager of a team and you're betting on your team to lose, when you're betting on, and even the nights you're not placing a bet, tells me you're managing different, tells me...
That was an evolving narrative because he said, I only bet on my team to win. So if you bet on nights when, only on nights, say, when Tom Browning is pitching, but you don't bet on nights when Mario Soto or Bill Gullickson are pitching.
Eric Davis isn't in the starting lineup.
Yeah. What is that telling you? So he says, well, I only bet on my team to win. So the nights you're not betting on them, that means you don't have confidence in your starting pitcher, whatever. And all of a sudden it evolved to, like, in 2007, I bet on my team every night. I had that much belief in it. It got to the point where I never bet on baseball to I bet on my team every night. Well, it was all to fit whatever narrative cropped up.
Pete Rose is great to listen to as long as he's not talking about the truth.
Yeah.
If you ask him a direct question, he'll say, it was a long time ago, it doesn't matter, I don't remember, I dealt with bad people, blah, blah, blah. And again, I think it comes down to people not liking him. I think, but the problem I have is I heard all these people, just admit the truth. Just say you bet on baseball and you'll get in. Well, he did that in 2004.
Because he wanted to sell books.
Well, that might have been part of it, but he did what people asked and isn't in anyway. Now, look, I probably wouldn't vote for him either. I'm not a hard no on him, but I still look at the all-time hit leader, not in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a guy who, is in the tops in everything. And I have a hard time having him not in there. Now, if you're going to make a rule that you can't bet, you got to enforce it. And if you're going to let Rose in, you got to let Joe Jackson in, and you've got to you got to redo that debate and all that.
Well, there's a story that Shoeless Joe in 1919. And, of course, it's talked about in Field of Dreams, too, the unbelievable World Series he had. Why would he throw the World Series, but yet have these great stats? It's obvious he wasn't. This is the narrative. I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but it's like, look at these incredible stats Joe Jackson put up in the 1919 World Series. No way was he involved in this. No way was he trying to throw the series. So there's more hard evidence to suggest that Joe Jackson was not involved in throwing the 1990 World Series. Well, now Pete Rose has admitted he bet on baseball, so that part's irrelevant, because there was always, I never believed him when he was vehement denials. Never believed him.
I wouldn't believe him if he swore he was telling a lie. But I go back to the steroid era for a minute. I mean, let me throw out a what if for you.
Okay.
I'll just throw out a few names. Tell me if you think they ever get in. Okay, not if they're going to get voted in, because I think the Veterans Committee someday will put in some of these guys when it's out of the hands of the writers, and this era is 40 years old, and Barry Bonds is 85, and he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah, not the current Veterans Committee as it's comprised today.
Of a bunch of Bob Feller types.
Right.
I don't think they're going to get in.
No.
But I think when the players from the 90s are on the Veterans Committee, you're going to see these guys get in. The John Crooks and people like that will be on that committee. And I think they're going to let those players in. Let's forget about Clemens and Bonds for a minute, because I think they will get in 2037. I think they'll be in. Anybody else from that do you see getting? Do you see anybody getting voted in? Anybody is? I think McGuire's a definite no.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sosa's a definite no. I think Palmeiro's a definite no. They've all been on the ballot long enough. But is anybody else? Jeff Bagwell? Anybody else?
Well, Bagwell's in.
I thought he wasn't in.
Just this past year, he got in.
Was he in? Oh,
yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Nope, that's fine.
Thinking of. Then I was thinking of somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't
matter.
matter.
A while.
Yeah.
It took him quite a while.
Right.
But I mean, A-Rod, any of these guys going to be... Forget if they're...
A-Rod, I don't believe will.
You don't think he'll ever get in the Hall of Fame?
No. I don't believe he will.
I think we're old enough to where he does, because I think he will.
Okay. I'm not saying that's right. I believe that he showed enough before the alleged steroid, well, not alleged anymore, but before the steroid use. I think he showed enough to where he was a Hall of Fame caliber player and put up Hall of Fame numbers, but I think because of the character issues surrounding it, and again, you're leaving it in the hands of these committees, writers, whomever is voting on this to be like moral arbiters. They are supposed to take that into consideration.
Yeah, it's true. That is in the baseball rules.
Which is also a slippery slope, because you get a guy like Ferguson Jenkins, old school pitcher who had some brushes with the law back when, and yet they voted him in. Again, I'm not denying that he should be in there or should be in there, but
great pitcher, no doubt about it.
But if you're going to make the argument for some that are already in, and here's the danger, and I know this is a nightmare of some baseball writers that have voted players in, there's probably, very likely, players in right now that have used performance-enhancing drugs. And if that knowledge is ever ascertained, now you're opening up a big Pandora's box. But I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think A-Rod will ever get in. Clemens, I have a feeling he will someday. Don't know when.
I would agree with
Don't know how long down the road. Barry Bonds, I believe, should be, because of the discussion we just had. His body of work before the alleged steroid use speaks for itself. I think he should be in.
I think you and I need balance.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think that's what needs to happen.
So, and again, I just don't know what these guys are thinking. It's just that there's so many layers to it.
500 and some odd guys voting.
There's so many layers to it, yeah.
But if you just judge it on the percentages that we've seen, and Bonds and Clemens have been on the ballot maybe 6 years now, 5, 6 years. They retired in like 06, 07.
07 was their last year, so they would have been first eligible in 13.
So 5 years they've been on the
Yeah,
ballot.
5 years.
And they've kind of been stuck in that 30 to 50%, and you need 75. And I haven't seen the dial move very much on that. I think it's slightly gone up a little bit, but at some point we're going to have years where nobody gets in.
Yeah, there's been years where it's just been
one guy. Dawson got in one time. He was the only guy that was voted in.
Yeah. I still remember in 1993, Reggie Jackson was the only guy to get in. I'm like, is that not perfect for a guy like Reggie Jackson to be the only guy to get in, given his mad eagle the size of Manhattan,
Well, I mean, he's one of the first home run strikeout guys I can think of.
Here's I was kind of searching for something. A friend and I were discussing this about Hall of Fame, particularly as it relates to Pete Rose, and asking, should Pete Rose be allowed in the Hall of Fame? And, I had my arguments as to why he should not. And he says, as for Rose specifically, I'm a fan and I don't want him in the Hall, but based on his accomplishments and transgressions, I would go along with having his bust and a plaque with his stats placed on a pedestal in the parking lot or plaza outside the Hall of Fame, eternally looking at the door. That would be very symbolic, wouldn't it? Because there's banned from baseball for life because of gambling. It. So having something kind of, maybe, I don't know, Hall of Shame that's just short.
1991 was the year that they switched the rules specifically for him. I mean, that was the year they said, if you're on this list, you can't with the Black Sox and with other guys that have been suspended, Benny Koff, Jimmy O'Connell, people from Wave, and Commissioner Landis, the greatest commissioner in the history of any sport, only commissioner not under the tool of owners, and that's another show probably. But I do find it a little bit unfair that they changed the rules. Now, the Hall of Fame and Major League Baseball are two separate things.
Yes, thank you. I was going to bring that up, but yes.
But, is that slightly unfair that the rules got changed just the year before he happened to have his name on the ballot?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong or he should have been in or however you want to put that, but clearly the rules were changed for one reason. Mm-hmm. So his name could not be placed on the ballot. End of story.
Yeah, and that was well. I think baseball was so resentful and bitter that happened on their watch that he was conducting this kind of activity and some questionable
Giamatti's death, which
questionable characters.
Magnifies him even more.
Right.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but I just I grew up in this '90s, '80s era that I have so many great memories. I hate to see all the players from there just kind of get erased. And the same writers voting against these guys were the same writers glorifying them 10 years earlier. So I don't think they have much credibility either. So
sure.
It's just kind of all around. I mean, I've said this before. You think they deserve to go in, and you think something should be on their plaque, then do it. Let's have an end to it. Let's not debate this till Alex Rodriguez is 65. Let's just find some sort of compromise and end it like that.
Right. Yeah. I think what Alex Rodriguez did. I mean, do we even know? I mean, I think his rookie year was 95, 96. Do we even know how far back the allegations go
the allegations
for his use?
That I remember go back to when he arrived in New York.
That would have been 04.
Yeah, or possibly as early as when he signed his big contract, which was 01.
Okay.
They don't go back to. That's what I.
Then I might have to revise my statement because that's only 4 or 5 years. That's not nearly enough body of work
in Seattle
to be a Hall of Famer. Okay.
Yeah, I could be wrong. It could be when he went to New York, so it might be 9 years under him, not
okay.
6. But and here's the hard subjective part. Okay, Alex Rodriguez say he hit 52 home runs in a year. Well, without steroids, he might have hit 38. How do you reconcile that? I think he would have been a great player. He went from being great to super great.
Right.
So how do you... he wouldn't have hit 0. So how do you... Well,
that's the thing I always talk about and relates to steroid use between pitchers and hitters. Now, with pitchers, it's a definite advantage. Look what Juan Rincon did for like the 06 Twins. I mean, add an extra 3-4 miles per hour. So he goes from 92 to 96. That's huge when you're talking about a pitcher and his fastball. Now, a hitter, getting around on a baseball and a fastball is the most difficult skill in any professional sport. No one doubts that. Yeah. So, if you take performance-enhancing drugs, it ain't going to increase your bat speed. No. You're not going to be able to get around the ball a lot quicker. Like you said, it's going to turn 400-foot fly balls into 430-foot fly balls. The difference between a ball caught at the center field wall and going over the wall.
And it also doesn't make your eye any better. It doesn't keep you from chasing junk.
But I've been one that argues steroids have shortened careers. I mean, look at Mark McGwire. He hit 70 home runs in 1998. He hit 60-something in 1999. By 2001, he's gone.
Yeah.
Because he got crippled, his injuries, his joints. I mean, had he not taken steroids, not set those records, and played 5 more years, he might have ended up at the same Sammy Sosa. When he went to Baltimore, he was a shell of what he was. And he was maybe 36 or something like that. He might have been around that age. And you just wonder, okay, I think it ended up shortening their careers. Yeah. It made them better for those. Barry Bonds missed an entire season, 2005. Mm-hmm. And, of course, he was 40 years old by then. But, I mean, you could make an argument that, and again, it's a what if, that it actually hindered them rather than... It certainly didn't extend their careers.
Well, and Mark McGwire looked like 2 different people when he was with the A's and when he was with the Cards.
True, but there's a big, long separation. If you look at McGwire, it hit 49 home runs his rookie year in 1987. Now, he had played in the Olympics before that.
Right.
Clearly, he was clean. Now, and if you look at him later, now you can lift weights and get big, and over time, and over 10 years, something like that can happen. However, it was... not quite that long.
Right.
But, I mean, he was somebody that his first 6 years or so in the big leagues, I mean, he hit, I can't add it up in my head, but I think he hit well over 200 home runs his first 6 seasons. Now, McGwire, you could argue, his batting average and other stats, you could argue he's not really, there was a day 500 home runs got you in, and there was just no ifs, ands, buts about it. Even though some guys had to wait, like Harvin Killebrew, he had to wait a few years, 84, and he retired in 75.
Why? I don't remember the circumstances around that.
To me, I don't know why there seems to be a standard for a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I don't get that if you're a Hall of Famer.
I don't either. No.
You are, but I don't understand that.
I'm glad you brought up McGuire's first 5 seasons. He hit 175 home runs his first 5 seasons. You remember that 5th season,
he had a batting
1991. His batting average was 201.
Yeah.
And
how many did he hit? 42 in 92?
And then he went from 22 in 91 to 42 in 92, and he was a lot bigger from 91 to 92. You could tell he had bulked up. And so I think it probably something started around that time frame where he started to use something. And like you said,
93 and 94, he missed most of those years with injuries.
That's it. Yep. Yes,
in 95, he came back and hit 39.
27 games in 93, only 47 in 94. And then he got traded to St. Louis in 97. So he hit 58 home runs in 97. And so that's when it started. Okay, Mark McGwire hit 58 home runs. That's the most we've seen in a long time. He's got a legit shot to catch Roger Maris's record in 98. So it was season-long anticipation that Mark McGwire...
too was... hit 54.
Well, in 94, Griffey was the fastest to hit 30 home runs.
Yeah.
And, of course, that was a strike shortened season. And that's the year Tony Gwynn, he had like 394?
Yeah, I think he struck out 13 times.
That was insane.
I remember about 94, Kirby Puckett led the American League in RBIs. He had like 112 in like 108 games or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me bring up one last thing. We'll wrap this up soon because we've been going a long time, but it's a lot of fun. And I could do this for 5 more hours.
Indeed, yes.
Because I think we need to talk about some baseball history one time and just have talk about baseball in like the 20s, 30s. But if you look at the career of Tony Gwynn Tony Oliva, and you look at the career of Kirby Puckett, okay, they both had their careers shortened by injuries. If you take batting average, home runs, RBIs, do Oliva's next to Kirby Puckett's, and you're going to see very similar statistics.
Okay.
Puckett had a few more hits. Puckett had like 2,300. Oliva, I know Joe Mauer passed him last year. Had like 1917, I want to say. But if you look at their batting average, home runs, and RBIs, and they played almost the same amount of years, because Oliva came up for cups of coffee in 62 and 63, but 64 was his actual full rookie year. And I think 76 was his last year.
Yeah, exactly right.
13 years a guy. Or something like that.
Yeah, and Tony O, from 64 to 76, it's 13 seasons. But 72, he only played 10 games. And in his final season, he only played like 67 games.
Yeah,
so you're talking about 1,917 hits for Tony O to 2,304 for Kirby. So Kirby had like 400 more hits. Kirby batting average 318 to Oliva's 304.
Oh, okay. I thought they were closer than that.
Yeah.
Tony did it much more of a pitcher's era, but yeah.
Sure.
What were the home runs? They had to be 200-something apiece?
Tony O had 220. Kirby had 207.
Huh.
So, yeah, similar.
Well, why is one guy a first ballot Hall of Famer and the other guy never got any votes?
Yeah, who knows?
23-time batting champion. I think he led the hit league in hits 4 times. Of course, Kirby, great too. I mean, it's not a knock on him. I think they're both great. But I think Tony Oliva, he doesn't get hurt in 1972. You're looking at a surefire Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
The guy still can't speak English after being here since 1959. Love him anyway. But
I gotta be like that. Wow. Yeah. I used to work with Tony Oliva's kid, Pedro. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't like the guy, but that's another story entirely.
Another Bloomington guy.
Yeah. Not gonna hammer him on this podcast. It's being appropriate, But I actually met Tony. Pedro and I were working as security officers at downtown St. Paul, and Tony
couldn't have been a nicer guy.
Oh yeah. He even he came by. His son introduced me to him, and then he came by a second time to bring Pedro lunch. And I remember, I'll never forget this, in his Cuban accent, called me, "Hey, bro, where's Pedro?" Tony even said my name. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I digress. Did Tony O? The designated hitter came along in, 73? So, yeah, it's not like he still had to slog through and play the field, even though he was hurt.
Well, and
You know?
there was Rod Carew used to tell stories about when he roomed with Oliva, how he would his knees were so bad that he'd be on ice all night, moaning and groaning.
Can't imagine.
Barely walk. You didn't have, like you've said before, you didn't have the medical options back then that you had today, and it's just kind of a tragedy that he's just another guy. And there's so many in baseball history, whether you talk about Smokey Joe Wood or Tony Conigliaro and people like that who had those big injuries. Johnny Beasley, look him up.
Yeah.
Got injured pitching in World War II, won 21 games for the 1942 Cardinals, and got injured, hurt his arm pitching for a team in, I don't remember what branch he was in, but he was a pretty good young player that ended up getting. Dizzy Dean is another one who got hurt. And, you know, remember his toe? It fractured, it's broken. What are you talking about? Now the Cubs with the greatest loss leader contract of the 1930s, bringing him on for 1938. But that's for another show.
Yeah, it's just like you said, you only had access to so much medical technology back in the day, and I imagine how bad does it have to get before you'd actually have in-season surgery? You know, just say ice it up, you get through the season, and then
There's a great story about Christy Mathewson, how he just got dead arm. They called it just dead arm.
Mm-hmm.
By the time he got it, he was already, of course, a legend. But he was only maybe 35, 36 years old. And he got shipped off to the Reds, ended up being their manager, and then died right after World War I after getting tuberculosis. But, I mean, he was one of the first great pitchers. Ed Walsh would be another one, the lowest ERA in history. And they just, one day, arm just went.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's nothing they could do. And it was just gone. So, you know, they already had achieved immortality, but, you know. And
it's amazing to think about how routine Tommy John surgery is. Like if a guy blows out his elbow, he'll be back spring training next year. And it's like
Tommy John had, what do you call them, residuals or something.
Yeah.
He needs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How many times you see a relief pitcher come in? Bert Blyleven's the best at this. Always gives, this guy was drafted back in 2005 by the St. Louis Cardinals. Had Tommy John surgery in 2010. First year at the major league level was 2008. I mean, how many times do you hear that?
I'm just grateful it wasn't a pitcher named Harold Lipschitz, because then that would have been bad news to having to say that all the time. Yeah, you had the Lipschitz surgery.
That would be a guy with two first names.
Right, yeah. So very convenient that is. I'll just say, just two easy names to pronounce. So, yeah, it was very experimental, and Tommy John says, well, what do I got to lose?
Yeah, he's a great pitcher.
And how pitchers are able to kind of reinvent themselves, too, because you got, you think about a guy like Frank Tanana, who in the 70s, he and Nolan Ryan were these fireballers with the California Angels. Got injured.
It's the 87 Twins.
He was with the 87 Tigers and was just a lefty junk baller, but yet extended his career another few years. I'm trying to think who he was compared to. CC Sabathia. Sabathia was the same type of guy. Big, huge fireballer.
Change-up pitcher.
Yeah, now, he just throws that junk in the dirt.
He throws it slower and slower and slower.
And this year was one of the better years he's had in a while, so he's reinvented himself,
Well, great ones maybe can do that. I don't know.
Well, I think that's important. I mean, reinventing yourself. I mean, how many times can a batter see you before they start to learn, your patterns?
Well, you had Walter Johnson versus Ty Cobb, the most ever.
Yeah, and I think that you have to be inventive. You have to be creative in order to keep that edge. I think if you try to stay the same athlete for 10, 12, 14 years...
Well, your skills will diminish,
skills diminish. You have to figure out other ways to win, and winners do that.
Well, look at Trevor Hoffman at the end of his career. He was a change-up closer, just threw change-ups and closed out ninth innings.
For a guy, though, that when he blew that game at Colorado, the wild card game or the play...
he was with the Padres at the time.
I never felt worse for a guy.
Yeah, Matt Holliday still hasn't pitched on plate. Yeah. Sorry, he hasn't.
I agree there.
Yeah.
You should have never been in that situation, but I never felt worse for a player than for Trevor Hoffman. I mean, he was like you'd have to go back to Ralph Branca to feel that bad for somebody.
Well, again,
Calvin Schiraldi.
This gets back to what we were talking about Joe Nathan earlier. Trevor Hoffman, the same vein, the 98 Padres, he had like a 1.40 ERA, and he came in to close out Game 3 in San Diego against the Yankees in the 98 series. Scott Brocious took him deep.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like this guy didn't give up a hit hardly ever, and then gives up the big home run to Brocious, and World Series pretty much over. It was 3-0 after that.
Well,
so
done then.
yeah, some guys, they just, for some reason, and again, that too is another podcast for another day, but for some reason, postseason, the regular season success is just mirror opposite in the regular season. So, regular season to postseason. Amazing.
Well, was that enough baseball for one podcast?
I think that'll give people something to think about. I mean, not only,
I'll tell you what, I could go on for 4 more hours, but I think we'll do it again. I think that's
I think that not only did we get a lot of great baseball knowledge, but a lot of lessons that are transferable to other things in life, whether that's how you approach your career, whether that's how you run in a political race, or just being a human being. You know, you don't want to be a Ty Cobb. You don't want to be... You know,
well, I'll take a 366 batting average any day.
There was a Prager University video talking about Ty Cobb's life and how some of the things, the negative things said about Ty Cobb were maybe over-exaggerated.
There's always that.
Yeah. So, check it out. Yeah. Prager University, Ty Cobb.
Maybe you don't want to be a Jose Canseco. Maybe that's a better way to do it.
And I'll tell you, Ty Cobb... Yeah. One smart investor.
Oh, yeah.
You want to know how to make millions of dollars? Ty Cobb put a lot of money in Coke.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, I mean.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't want to go that route, Andrew.
I'll tell you, he died a very wealthy guy. He didn't make a ton of money playing.
Nobody did back then.
Yeah. I mean, when he became a player-manager, Frank Navin, the old Detroit owner, didn't want to pay a manager. So they made Cobb the player-manager. That's how frugal he was. So there was, Cobb was one smart investor. Yeah. And that's, again, something you're just not going to hear because of the narrative that's been given about him that's now accepted. Right. And here's the other thing. I'll say one more thing about Ty Cobb. He grew up in Georgia under segregation, which probably gave him some of his views.
Right.
Later in life, he became a champion for black ball players.
Huh.
In the 50s, he didn't die until 1961, but he became a champion for black ball players later in life. Just like a lot of people changed their minds about the racial divide in the country, he was one of them.
Yeah, we evolve, absolutely. No doubt about it. Yeah, well, what do you think, we can wrap it up here quick, but what do you think of Gardy getting the band back together in Detroit? Steve Little, Rick Anderson, Joe Valvin, they're all back together, boys!
Back together. Well, I don't know. I'm happy Gardy got another shot.
Oh, I am too. I always like Gardy.
It's just kind of weird him being in Detroit. I kind of shake my head.
They're going to be in the
doing well health wise too.
Ooh, that job's going to stress him out.
Oh boy, I'll tell you what, he might have to check into the doctor by May or June. I don't think they're going to be very good.
I always worried about Gardy. What got him kicked out of most games, as we talked about hit batsmen earlier, is when a pitcher threw at a Twins batter, no warning, and then a Twins batter threw behind the opponent and got kicked out.
Or threw 3 inches off the plate, too. I mean, you got to be able to throw.
I'll never forget this. It's on YouTube. It was a 2012 game. Twins were playing at Texas. Roy Oswalt, near the end of his career, hit Joe Mauer with a 3-0 pitch deliberately in the shoulder, and Gardy was hot. And you could tell in the dugout he was saying, but no warning. And so Josh Hamilton comes up the next half inning. Scott Diamond was a pitcher for the Twins and threw behind him, and Diamond got kicked out, and Gardy, I thought Gardy was going to, seriously, I thought he was going to have a coronary right there. Seriously, you could tell him saying to the umpire, he says, you let it happen, you let it happen.
And you know what? Can I say one last thing?
Of course.
I think, what do you this is a whole other show topic. Because if we had baseball replay, nobody know Don Denkinger's name. And you go back to 1987, Game 7, there were few blown calls in that game.
Yeah, both sides. Don Baylor was thrown out the plate, but he was called out, but he's safe.
First, and Lee Wire totally missing that call.
Well, Greg Gagne reached an infield single, even though Joe McGrain
hit the base.
And then Puckett doubled him in the next at bat.
Brought in Danny Cox, which was the greatest thing Wadey Herzog other than Joaquin Andujar in 85.
Oh, God. That was an epic meltdown, yeah.
Goodness. But the one thing I hate about replay is I love managers argue with umpires. Go Google Earl Weaver and I just love seeing that. Now it's throw the challenge flag. Or no, I want to see.
I love those crusty managers.
I want to see the Billy Martin meltdown. I want to see the Earl Weaver meltdown. Gardenhire, Bobby Cox always was great at it. Or the minor league manager that was crawling on the ground or whatever. Jim Leland, I remember tossing bats and helmets on the field. We're not going to see
Lloyd McClendon picking up the base and leaving. Yeah.
Lou Piniella threw great.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ricey has the best stories about that. Earl Weaver was the same off the field, too. Like, he got pulled over one night because Earl liked his whiskey, apparently. And he says, okay, sir, I need you to step out of the car. We suspect, we're swerving over the road. We suspect you may be intoxicated. And Earl Weaver just looked at the cop and said, take my word for it, pal, I'm drunk. So, yeah, those were some great stories, yeah. There is one on YouTube, and it's unedited, too, where Earl got into an argument with an umpire.
Old Memorial Stadium.
And Earl said, I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, and no one's going to remember your name. And the umpire,
for one reason, to F us.
Yeah, and the umpire says, what are you going to be in the Hall of Fame for, Earl? Effing up World Series? Yeah, those were the...
One more than I've lost.
Yeah. Those are good. Oh, so too much to go through.
Way too much to do.
Way too much.
With 100+ years of history, there's going to be...
Scratch the surface.
Yeah.
And I didn't even bring up my favorite team, the 1929 Philadelphia A's. Yeah. Second greatest team.
Well, now you did.
Was that back in the day when Connie Mack wore a suit and tie managing the game?
Until he retired in 1950.
Oh. Yeah, his wins record will never be broken.
Or his losses record.
Yeah, well, there's that, too.
Of course, he did partly own the team. That might be one reason.
There you go. There you go.
Fire yourself, isn't it? Wow. So that's just scratching the surface, but there's so much gold in there. I mean, whether you're a baseball fan, whether you're a fan of business, whether you're a fan of politics, there's a lot to take from it. So we want to make sure that we keep delivering you not only just the same old every week, but we like to throw our own change-ups. So consider this one of those. I think we'll probably do more of this in the future where what lessons can you take from other walks of life? Because like we decided, thinking outside of the box, changing things up. That's how winners win. They don't do the same thing everybody else is doing, using the same metrics, the same analytics. And so our job is to get you to think differently about things. It's been great having you here, Brad. Do you want to plug your show? I mean, we've been guests on your show so many times.
And you're welcome back anytime, by the way. So.
Absolutely. We'd love to do that soon. Why don't you give us your, whatever you want to do, give us your spiel so people can find you.
Appreciate that. Well, I still blog regularly at bradcarlson.org, and it's also cross-posted at True North. Check it out, looktruenorth.com. And yeah, my show on AM 1280 The Patriot, part of the Northern Alliance Radio Network, is every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. Right here in the Twin Cities, AM1280thepatriot.com. You can also find it at iHeartRadio, and people want to check out the podcast, can't listen to it live because it's football season. I understand. AM1280thepatriot.com. Just click on the podcast and you'll find all of my shows and my colleague Mitch's shows as well. So appreciate that. Been there 6+ years now and not tired of it yet. So a lot of fun, yes.
And just remember what we talked about on the last show.
Yeah.
The bicycle sales tax. Oh. I'm still on that.
All right.
It'll be Richter for governor. On the BST, I'm going to make those bicyclists pay for their own bike lanes. BST, all right?
Yeah, you'll have to go back and hear that.
You are a forward thinker, Andrew Richter. I like it.
Have to go back and listen to that podcast. It's well worth it.
Riveting, yes.
So, thank you guys so much for listening to us. We really appreciate it. We can't do this without you. You know what's going on in your cities better than we do. So when you hear things, when you want to run for something, when you step into a commission spot, you got questions, email us. COMMsolutionsmn@gmail.com. commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. This podcast will be up on our blog, commsolutionsmn.com. Make sure that you're sharing it, because that's what makes you a local hero. It doesn't make us a local hero, it makes you a local hero, because you're giving the information to your friends, your neighbors, that they need to make their community better. We love you, Minnesota. Now it's time for you to get to work.
Take my life, caught a break between the lines. Don't let me be. If I get too caught